We're in the middle of saying something. I
Oh,
apologize.
I cannot remember.
Star Trek. The forced sense of
Oh yeah, like we're all a big family and we're in love, and it's just like, what is this? Like that's not found anywhere.
yeah, and
Like
it's
the one example maybe is like at the end of like the motion picture when like Kirk and Spock like have some emotion, and it's like
mhm.
that's earned for like that's like a 30-year payoff. Like what are you doing? Like,
Yeah. Well, it's
but yeah,
also it's so forced. They do it so early. It comes across as like it's like someone described the show as like it's like histrionic. It's
yeah.
like insane. It's like you've known each other for like two episodes and people are every conversation people are like bursting into tears. Like what is happening? Like like
Yeah,
these people are not okay. Like what like get your
Alex Kurtzman's idea of humanity is very weird. Like the way he writes emotions is very sociopathic. It's like
yeah.
if they're sad, they're crying, and if they're happy, they're in love. And it's like it's just very there's no room for any kind of subtlety.
Yeah. Well, Dan, how else do you know if somebody's sad unless they're just weeping constantly,
It's
obviously,
true. It's very true, actually.
you know. But
You know,
that's one of those things that they've talked about that's something missing from writers' rooms because too many writers are like fresh out of college and stuff.
yeah.
Like they're not having experiences, they're not going and doing things, so they're like their understanding of writing it comes from other TV shows and it's like a copy of a copy, you know.
I mean, I watched Wuthering Heights last night, and only one character cried, so therefore they were the only sad character in Wuthering Heights.
Yeah,
That's
that's
you know, yeah, clearly, no one,
that's
everybody else was very, very, very happy.
that's how emotions definitely work,
Yeah,
you
of
know.
course. Yeah, no one else was upset. And famously, the saddest love story of the Gothic period.
And here's what I don't understand though. Like the part that really confounds me, where it's like, okay, they've had this critique from the audience. People have been saying
Mhm.
this for 5, 6 years now. People have been like, hey,
Mhm.
could you please not do certain things that are just abhorrent to watch?
Hmm.
And for some reason, they go out of their way to show that they have zero interest in listening to that feedback. And I don't understand.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird how many years you can ride off the coattails of one success. Like Kurtzman has a career because of Lost, basically.
Yeah.
And it's like it's insane that you can still milk that after, especially after it ended the way it ended and how divisive that was. But like it's insane how many projects he's been a lead writer on. And
Yeah.
it's like he's not good at it, but you have one success and it's like an I don't know, it's like an algorithmic thinking type thing. But yeah.
But yeah, it's been like the show has had terrible Discovery's had terrible ratings for multiple
Yeah.
seasons, and it's like it just keeps going, and it's like why? Like who does he have dirt on? Like what is happening?
Yeah, it's very weird. It's also like I think it's also one of those things where I know Mike and Jay called it the producer show because at the beginning there's like 80 producers on it.
Yeah,
It just keeps, and I think maybe this is just a theory. I think maybe it's one of those things like what happened to Superman, where like Barbara Streisand's hairdresser had the rights to do it, and you had to please him in order to make a thing happen.
mm,
Where like you can't actually do Star Trek unless this person who owns these TV rights signs off on your script. So like you have to tweak it for them, and maybe Kurtzman's one of those people, or someone else is, but I think it might be one of those things where someone has like veto power over it because of that's like you. I'm assuming you've heard that Kevin Smith story about working on that Superman movie.
yes, I did. I've heard that. I've also seen that director give a response where he denied all of it, but of course he would, because you know.
He denied all of it, but then everything else he's worked on has all the things Kevin Smith's talking about.
Yeah, well, yeah, especially the Wild Wild West with that spider.
Yeah, and then fucking Superman finally came out, and it had a polar bear in it, and the spiders were changed to the tripod things.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, like you can deny it, but like clearly there's no reason to see a polar bear in this movie. It's someone just put it there. But yeah, it's very, very funny. And I think he's the reason they because he said he didn't want Superman to have that suit because he thought it was like words I won't say here. But
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah, he clearly, they took the underwear off the suit. I think that was also to appease him because that was kind of something Kevin Smith was talking about.
And which Superman movie was he a producer on?
Uh I think I think he's been a producer on everything up to the James Gunn one. I believe he was a producer on the Man of Steel.
Because I know that for Man of Steel, I also think that Zack Snyder wanted that the underwear gone.
That's probably true. That's probably true. He probably also agreed with that.
Yeah, I just feel like that's got him written all over it.
He wanted the guy Kevin Smith's talking about wanted the whole suit gone,
Yeah, he
which
wanted it
is
just to be black, right? Yeah.
I think I don't think he even wanted to be black. I think he just wanted Superman wearing regular clothes, which is like nuts.
That's
It's
amazing.
so insane, but yeah,
Yeah.
weird things can happen where if the people that own the rights to a thing don't sign off on it, you can't do it in Hollywood, which is very strange that that's a thing. But I bet that's what happened with a lot of the Star Trek stuff.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, I mean, what's your opinion on that Superman trailer?
The new one.
Yeah, the James Gunn one. What do you think?
The I haven't seen. I guess there was one with like GoPro type footage that I haven't seen that everybody got mad at. But the first trailer I saw, I thought it was great. It looks refreshing. It looks
Hmm.
like a new take on an old thing. It feels like a comic book, which is a
Yes.
good thing when you're doing Superman.
Hmm.
Like it, yeah, I liked it quite a bit. I like that it's not shying away from it feels like a grounded world that has stakes where like, people could die, people could get hurt, things could happen. But also there's like, room to have fun and have like kaiju monsters and like aliens and things. And it feels true to the very, very true to the source material.
Yeah, and that's very much the tone of comics, right? Is like you can have even in some of the best comics, the plot is absurd, but you can still have it work because you kind of create a weird non-reality, where it's
Yeah.
like things are, you can have those big stakes and that personal drama, and also, yeah, here's a kaiju, here's Superman fighting a giant robot in a stadium or something.
Yeah.
And James Gunn, I don't love everything he does, but I do think he has a really healthy understanding of tone. Like he just understands it.
Yeah. And he understands writing outsiders. That's probably the strongest thing he's good at.
Hmm.
And like obviously that's like, he's Superman is like that's what he is. That's
Yeah.
like the core of the whole thing. So I think he's gonna nail the characters. I think he's probably gonna nail the script structure. What I'm less certain about is if there's going to be too much comedy. James Gunn tends to use comedy as a crutch to avoid sincerity,
Yes.
which he got better at in the later Guardians films.
Hmm.
Guardians 1, it's kind of strange. Guardians 1 had a little of it. Guardians 2 had a ton of it, where like peak action scene, someone gets hit in the head, they'll watch out, and it's like you didn't need that. And then the third one, there's very little of it. There's some, but like that scene with Rocket passing away is like it's insane how I care more about this CG raccoon than I do. I felt more watching that than I did watching Iron Man die. And it's like it's Robert Downey Jr. He's been in like half the movies for like 10 years in a row, and it's like, no, James Gunn managed to make a CG raccoon feel more emotional. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Did you know that the voice of Rocket Raccoon was originally going to be, I think it was H. John Benjamin,
who's that?
the guy from Bob's Burgers, I think.
Oh, that's pretty good, actually.
Yeah, he was originally going
That's
to
pretty good.
do it, and then Bradley Cooper obviously was such a huge star that once he was even remotely interested, they were like, step aside.
That's
Um,
very funny. I like that Bradley Cooper got it. It's such a random pull,
yeah, and I didn't like his
but
voice at first for it. I thought it was driving me crazy when I saw the first movie at first, but then I started to get into it.
yeah,
Just when he was like, "Oh, are you just gonna do that?" I was like, "Oh, stop, stop, stop! Like this is
yeah.
too much. You sound like you sound he like
Watto,
yeah, yeah.
borderline Watto.
Republic credits are no good out here. I need something more real.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You take the boy, I take the. Yeah, it's
but it
very,
it
very
got really
close.
good. I think overall I started to really like Bradley Cooper in that role. Um,
Yeah, and I don't know, Guardians, the first Guardians movie was probably the most refreshing thing I've seen in 20 years. I don't know. It's hard to think of besides Fury Road, I think.
yeah,
And those two movies stand out as like the two big watershed things for me where it's like, okay, this feels new and interesting. And like, I think for a lot of kids when that movie came out, it was probably like their Star Wars kind of moment where it's like, oh, this feels big and new and interesting, and it's got cool ideas and art that doesn't look like other stuff we've seen. And
hmm
I like that a lot. I'm excited to see what else he does with it.
Well, as someone who's a big Superman fan, like I really like that was always like I just love that character so much. What I'm really
Mm,
hoping for is that he there's a huge so there's a big problem with the character. Well, there's multiple problems of how people have handled it, but so like you get Zack Snyder, who's like, I want to do the real world Christopher Nolanized version of it, which
yep.
in my opinion it does not work because the minute you put a red cape on a guy and have him fly around, it just comes across as kind of cringe to have him like try to put him in like quote unquote a real world. It just doesn't. It just
Yeah.
feels. It just feels like you're trying too hard,
Yeah.
and tonally, it's like you're not using what makes the character interesting. Like what makes him interesting is that tonally he's actually quite light.
Hmm.
But and then so what happens is in the comics have been suffering from this too. So they had and I I had a whole thing about this when I was talking to friends of mine in the industry, where I was like, you guys, I love you, but you kind of fucked this up. DC had they had a I have to curse less because I'm trying to get monetized. I have to be careful, Dan. I really got to work on this. I'm sorry.
I
Sorry, Dan.
understand. I understand.
Um, but so they had this thing where they had the Superman annual, and as you know, like an annual for a comic has like, hey, what's up, Edgar? The annual for a comic will have like, uh, it's like a collection of anthology stories that kind of celebrate the history of a character, and
Hmm.
it's kind of like a BBC Christmas special,
Hmm.
for Doctor Who. So they did this for Superman, and the problem was that everybody had the same idea. Everybody did a Superman story where it was like, we're not going to do the big hero thing. We're going to just like focus on something about like why what makes him special on an emotional level, and
Mm.
like and focus on the majesty and the compassion of the character. But the problem is everybody did that, so you had like 8 stories in a row that were all kind of dry small stories about his interactions with people, and they're all kind of hitting the same note where it's all like, look at how nice this fucking guy is. See, I cursed again. But
I got you. Don't worry. You're getting
um
there. You're getting better every day. A
every
little step closer every day. A little step closer.
I can't wait for YouTube to like when I apply for it. They're like, "Sir, you dropped an F bomb 142,000 times in 5 months."
It's
Um,
less than most people.
especially,
It's pretty good metrics.
um, and so they had the same idea, and it was just like, yeah, look at how chill he. And I was like, yeah, but like that's not what made the character popular. When he came out in the 1930s, those
Yeah.
comics were so exciting to people. Like Superman's jump. There's like one of his first stories was a woman is about to be executed, like in the electric chair, I think, or she's because they believe that she murdered her husband, and it's like a total. She was framed, and it's like a high stakes situation, and Superman bursts through the wall of the prison with evidence that she's innocent, and it's just really exciting. He those old 1930s drawings by I think it was Schuster.
Yeah.
He just like explodes through the wall, and he's like, unhand that and it's like, by today's standards that's not anything super innovative, but like it was super exciting, and none of that was in this annual. It was all like, I understand the character has a lot of history and you want to focus on the majesty of it, and like he's like the king of heroes, but like you got to remind people why he's exciting in the first place, and like you should have had some like fun big action set pieces, and yeah, and like one of the most disappointing parts of it was they had Olivier Coipel do a story,
Hmm.
who's like one of the best artists working in comics. He's incredible, and he chose to do a Superman story that was set in the 1940s. So he has the original Superman outfit with like the sandals
Yeah.
and the, what I'm talking about. And he has like the short cape,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and it looks incredible. And the story, like, it hints at the idea of like a Superman who's lower powered, like more how he was in the beginning, and he's
Hmm.
like in a car chase where he's jumping on different cars in traffic to like get to this car speeding around a corner to get this guy out.
Hmm.
But it's like 2 panels of that, and the rest of it is like the conversation afterwards. And I was so disappointed. I was like, dude, you could have had you had Olivier Coipel drawing a classic old school comic action set piece with a classic looking Superman in his original outfit, and
Yeah, that would have been cool.
instead you want to focus on like the conversation he has afterwards so that you can show, you know, the same thing that the other 3 or 4 stories in this anthology have been focusing on, which is like interpersonal like you have to, and that's not a fault of the writers. I think that's a fault of the editor, because the job of the
As a
editor,
big
yeah, go ahead.
as a big fan, well, actually, no. Finish your thought on the editor, and then
Well, it's
I'll
just
segue out.
the job of an editor is to catch that stuff and be like, you know, it's like you're like, you know, you're like the producer. The editor is there to like catch, to look at all the different stories and be like, are we doing this right? Like you need to look at it and be like, okay, yeah, we have this story. We need this flavor of storytelling here. We need an action set piece in the middle. We need to end it with a particular note here. I mean, we want to start it with mystery. Like you need that balance, and instead, just every story, because the writers aren't communicating with each other that much. That they're, you know, so
Right.
they don't know that they're all touching the same button over and over. You know. Anyways, but that's all. Sorry, continue. What were you gonna say?
No, yeah, no. I was gonna say, as a big fan of Superman, what do you think James Gunn is gonna do, and what do you want him to do, if those are different things?
That's a great question. I think I think James Gunn has a pretty good sense of what fans want usually. Like he
Mhm.
knows how to. He's very good at being a crowd pleaser. So I suspect he'll because one of the big complaint, and it's okay. I'm sorry, this is gonna be a bit of a long answer. I'm gonna try not to do
No,
it.
it's okay.
One of the things that baffled me about the Zack Snyder movies is that I just a lot of the things that he gets credit for, where they're like, well, at least he does this really well, and I'm like, I don't agree that he'd even like, you know, they're like, well, at least his movies are like kind of visually, and I was like, really? They're like gray brownish puke. There's nothing for me
Yeah,
to grab onto, and then they'll like,
yeah.
and they're like, well, at least he made like a gritty action film, and I was like, really? Because if you watch Man of Steel, it is quite dull. It's like a lot.
It feels like an episode of Dragon Ball Z. It's just I punch you, and then they punch me harder, and then I fly, and then I punch them even harder,
Yeah,
and then they punch me even harder, and then it's like the action is very unsatisfying
I
to
found it
me.
boring. I found the
Yeah,
action sequences boring. They're two CGI figures just bashing each other while buildings come down.
yeah.
And yeah, there's just a lot of components where I'm like I don't know why he has this reputation of like he's a filmmaker. He's like the he's the Jack Reacher of filmmakers. He's like for men, and it's like, is he? Because I feel like I don't find his movies to be satisfying on like a soulful masculinity level. I actually think his
Yeah,
like and he also like doesn't let Superman speak almost that entire movie. He barely talks, so it's just like this character is not. You know, I liked Henry Cavill, but the reason I bring that up is because I suspect I know that James Gunn was researching like how to put together really thrilling action sequences. So he wanted to do stuff where like, you know, he said he was looking at Top Gun Maverick for like reference for how to handle the flying, which I'm excited about.
yes, yep.
I think the movie from what I understand, it's less focused on humor than his other movies. People who have seen early screenings are like, yeah, it's not very funny. It's not
Good.
trying to be. Yeah, um, I think what he's going to do is he's going to access that part of himself that likes to turn, even if a character isn't really intended to be an insecure outsider, he's gonna filter Superman through that a little bit.
Mhm.
But I think he'll restrain himself from turning him into a full freaks and geeks character.
Mhm.
But it'll be just enough that people who, you know, have always been like, I don't really relate to Superman, are going to be like, oh, you know what, this version of him, I think he's going to do that. You know, I think he's going to have a really well paced movie
Yes, for
because
sure.
the fact that he's not doing an origin story, I think because of that, because he's not doing an origin story, he's definitely going to open with a big action sequence to like, because you have to like announce your presence as the one at the reins, and the way to do that is to be like, look at how well I'm handling this.
I'm assuming it's going to be that kaiju in the trailer. I think they're just going to
Yeah,
open with that, and then yeah,
that'd be cool. Yeah.
that's my guess. But
Um, Something I do like is this idea that because it's not an origin, it's like these other heroes already exist. So
yes,
I think the approach he's going to take is that these guys are kind of corporatized characters. They've kind of like they work for like Maxwell Lord or whatever, and then Superman kind of represents this like I guess an anti-corporate, or like he's more of a freelancer, so he kind of inspires them to be less beholden
mm,
to their boss, quote unquote. um, which I like because I think that that's a way for, because I think James Gunn, I don't think he would enjoy or even respect a character who was purely representative of the status quo.
Sure.
Um, so I think for him to like enjoy working on a character like Superman, he kind of has to put him through this filter of being like he's a rebel in some way, um, which I'm down for because that's kind of how the character was conceived. He was meant the original creators said he was a combination of Hercules and Robin Hood.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was like the whole idea was that he was like he represented blue collar Americans. That's why he's like a a farmer's son, and so.
I don't know why, but I get a vibe from the trailers and everything I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
I get a vibe that he's gonna do a thing that we haven't seen with the character before, which I kind of am excited to see, but I think people are gonna hate it. I think he's gonna make him lose, or at least there's gonna be two battles and he's gonna win one and lose the other one. And I have a funny feeling he's gonna lean into like the Dark Knight ending where it's like the Joker wins and like Batman becomes hated because everyone thinks he killed Harvey Dent. And it's like I just get this weird vibe that it looks like he's gonna put Superman in an unwinnable scenario to like test the limits of what do you do with your morality when your power is
Mm-hmm.
useless. And I feel like that's a very good, fresh way to go, but I feel like people are gonna hate it.
I could see that being a problem for people for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't know. That's the vibe I get though, is that it's going to be some weird moral conundrum with like, okay, if you're the world policeman, I'm going to put you in a scenario where literally you can't make the right choice and then, essentially let yourself get beat to death as a result. But yeah, I don't know. That seems to be the vibe I'm getting because they're bringing in the conflict in that fictional country.
yeah. Well, okay. So what I think is that they're actually going to do that, and I think that's going to be the second act low.
Yeah,
But I do think in the third act he's going to give us a very very happy ending because I think that he wants to.
I hope so. It'd
I,
be nice.
yeah, I think I think James Gunn understands people are kind of desperate for this optimism.
Yeah.
Um, so I suspect he'll be like, no, 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 we're gonna end with a, I think that shot of the trailer of him and Lois kissing while they like float up together and twirl, like that's gonna be.
Mhm.
I think that'll probably be toward the end of the film as a, but yeah,
That
sorry, go ahead.
do you think that thing in the background of the shot of them kissing is that character that's like a miniature sun? So what's his name, like Solaris or something?
Yeah, I forgot his name. I would imagine. I mean, I know that James Gunn loves pulling from like the more obscure characters, and I'd be down for that. I mean, honestly, like I didn't speculate too much on that because it's so intentionally blurry that I just feel like I'm gonna get frustrated if I even try to like,
Sure.
but yeah, I mean, I would imagine it's that. I like that as a I guess a third act villain because I think it tests him in a way that's a little different than like I'm mostly looking forward to that fight with Ultraman that you see in the trailer
Oh yeah, that looked cool.
because I've always had my like my very specific idea of how I'd want to see like a modern Superman, slugfest, and I liked the idea of him being kind of a Greco-Roman wrestler. I just think that's
Mm.
like I
It
like.
fits. Yeah, it
Yeah, go
fits
ahead.
the design too. Yeah.
Yeah, it does, especially the classic with the the underwear and the it's like because it's like I like this idea that he's like the greatest athlete in the solar system,
Yeah. Yeah, it's great.
but so I'd love to see that. I think that if I were them for a model for how you'd want to handle that scene, I think I would be looking at like Terminator 2 when Arnold
Mm,
versus the T-1000 when they're just like
yeah.
smashing each other through the walls of the shopping mall, you know.
Right.
Um, but anything that doesn't involve full CGI figures for unending amounts of time, I think I'd be down for.
Maybe he's gonna. I know nothing about that Solaris character, so if this isn't in the power set, let me know.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Do you think they're going to try and do a thing like they did with Superman Returns, where instead of making a continent made of kryptonite, he's going to make a false sun that gives off radiation that depowers him?
I don't know. That's a great question because I don't know if James Gunn wants to do Kryptonite. I think I can't I don't know what's in his head, but I know that
Yeah.
Kryptonite has been used in so much in the previous iterations that he might want to be like, hey, let's save that for a second film or something. Um, but I definitely think that they're going to do something that involves Lex Luthor figuring out how to like get to him, obviously.
Yeah,
But I don't know that he'll rely on kryptonite because I do think that it's something it's I don't want to say it's played out, like you can't not have it in a story eventually, but I don't know
I
that they're
feel
going to do it in
like
the first movie.
if that character is a false, I don't know nothing about that character, but if that villain is a false star, like a sun,
Hmm.
I feel like that's probably the route to depower him if they change the color, because isn't it like a red sun thing versus a yellow sun thing?
Yeah, there's some stuff like that, but also if that character is in it, I'm interested in seeing how they're going to handle the Fortress of Solitude because a lot of this seems to be based on Frank Quitely and Grant Morrison's Superman. Um,
Mm,
and in that version of the story, one of like there's like an infant of that same creature. I forgot his name. The one you Solaris. Yeah, one of those. He has like there's an infant star eater. Like it's like a they're like star. They're like creatures that devour stars or something.
okay.
So Superman keeps one in the Fortress of Solitude as like a pet, and he just like feeds it tiny little stars that he like makes with a like Zeus's anvil or something. It's something crazy.
Something insane. Yeah.
It's just Grant Morrison just like high off his ass and just being like, um,
Yeah. Doesn't he have like a cosmic zoo or something?
yeah, he does have,
Like
of
like a
endangered.
menagerie?
It's like endangered species that he's rescued and he keeps them there in like, and he has these like robot assistants that help him maintain the yeah. It's like a animal rescue for like because he has a he has a soft spot for endangered species because he technically is one himself.
Yeah,
So
that's
he's
interesting.
yeah, I like that idea, and I like the idea that he's like the Grant Morrison Superman is really interesting because he treats him like he's just this cosmic humanitarian,
Sure.
um, which I like this idea that he doesn't see himself first and foremost as like a warrior. He's like, well, no, I mean, I guess I get a bit in fights when I have to, but mostly he's like, I just want to like keep things alive,
Yeah,
you know.
he's a big blue boy scout.
Yeah, my whole thing with Superman that I would love to see James Gunn do to answer your question is I'd love to see him treated like I've always thought you treat Superman like a town sheriff,
Sure.
where he's like a
Could see that.
real nice guy, but also like don't mess with his townsfolk because he's lived here his whole life and he really likes it here. So like um,
I really hope, because I don't, maybe I'm, correct me if I'm wrong. When Suicide Squad came out, the James Gunn one, we didn't know that Starro was the villain, right?
yeah, I think that was a reveal, right? That wasn't.
That was like in the theaters. They didn't show Starro in the trailers, right?
I don't think so. They might have showed it in one of the latter trailers, but definitely not the initial trailer.
My hope is that it's Brainiac. I hope, because I know that Supergirl's in the movie, so it makes me think that when it shows that scene of him in that weird like cell in outer space and he's like trying to punch through it, I'm wondering if he's in like some weird like bottled city type prison thing.
Oh
Like
yeah, because Brainiac does that.
he collects things and yeah. So I'm wondering if that's what it is, and I'm wondering if that's where the kaiju are coming from, if it's Brainiac releasing things. But I'm also wondering if that's what that big thing that we think is, I don't know, Solaris is in the background. I'm wondering if it's not actually that, and if it's a ship of some kind. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I hope it's something like that. I
If
hope
the
it's a twist.
if the villain was just like a faceless CGI thing, like I would not be so interested. I'd be pretty
No.
disappointed. It would make me feel like the Fantastic Four movie where Galactus was just a fog. I was just like, this is so
Yeah,
off.
that was such a weird choice.
But was it budgetary? Like, what made them do that?
I think it was partly budget, and I think it was also in that era where they were still embarrassed that they were making superhero movies and they couldn't figure out a cool way to do Galactus.
Galactus is so awesome already, though.
I think it was partly budget. I think it was partly they were embarrassed it was Galactus, and I think it was partly they wanted to force Doctor Doom back into the movie because that guy was under contract, and they just, between him and the Silver Surfer, they didn't have room for a third act villain to show up.
I just don't
But yeah,
understand these people. Like, if you just put Galactus in the way that he looks, people would have eaten that shit up. I would have loved
what
it.
they're doing now, finally, with our guy playing him.
Yeah, I know. The fact when I saw that he was playing Galactus, I was like, "Oh, I'll never get him to do Black Mirror now.
I
Never get him to do
mean,
that
never
voice."
say never. Never say never. Who knows?
I got to take you up on that offer to reach out to his agent.
Yeah.
I'll
See if I can get a hold.
yeah, that'd be great. Because who knows, maybe because even if I could get him to just do one line, like a single
Yeah.
line for the, you know. But yeah, if I had to cast Black Marrow tomorrow, it would be either him
Hmm.
or it would be Lee Pace.
Oh, Lee Pace is so good.
Yeah, he's an incredible. He's someone who actually for years I was like, why is he not playing Superman or Bat? One of those characters. Like he's such a stud.
When he was younger, he probably still could, honestly. He was like one of the only people I could think of that could play like Vampire Hunter D.
Oh my god, that would be perfect.
Because you need the look and you need the voice and you need the grace. And most people have one or two, but no people have all three. You need to be like weirdly graceful.
Yeah, well, I just think he should be more famous than he is. I
Oh
just
yeah, he totally should be.
it's never made sense to me that he hasn't, like, why is he not headlining so many more things? Like
I don't know.
he's such, I mean, I say this with full awareness of the cringe. He is such a beautiful man. Like he's so
Yeah.
beautiful. He's insanely beautiful and he's a great actor. He's got this incredible deep voice that's like,
Maybe he's like a, do you think he's like a secret asshole to like
maybe
work with? Do you
maybe
think maybe he's just like impossible on set or something?
you know, that's a good question. Yeah, I could see that. I
I
mean,
don't
I hope
know.
not. He's I hope he's a wonderful, kind person, but
Because he should be huge. He should be like, I mean, and he's been in huge things. He was Thranduil and The Hobbit, and
yeah.
he's, you know, he was fucking what's his name in Guardians of the Galaxy, Ronan,
Oh
and
yeah, yeah.
um and he's been in things, but he's not like a household name.
Yeah. Like he was in
And I
the Foundation
always
series.
I always think he's the guy in Pride and Prejudice, the 2006 one, but it's not. It's a guy that looks just like him playing Mr. Darcy, but it's not him. And I always think it's him, and it's not him.
Yeah, I don't. But that is a great question though. Like, what must he be like? Because for years I had the same thought about Army Hammer. I was like, why is Army Hammer not? And then I found out he like likes to eat people.
He's eating people.
That does make him hard to work with. I don't know. I mean,
Unironically, if they rebooted Silence of the Lambs, what a baller casting choice. Like, come on. Can you even imagine if they leaned into it
the
and they
meta
were like,
commentary.
he's young Hannibal Lecter. We're doing it.
Yeah.
We really wanted to get the character right, so we went to an actual cannibal, and I can just see the behind the scenes, in, you know, documentary footage. We really wanted to get it right. The same way that they went to Native Americans for Dances with Wolves, we wanted to go to a real, like the
Real
pretentious,
cannibal.
real pretentious behind the scenes DVD commentary. We needed a real cannibal to capture the
Yeah.
gravitas of this.
And it's just the director sitting in front of a glass shielded window behind which is Army Hammer.
Yeah,
That's really funny.
man.
I don't. I mean,
I wonder if he's ever going to come back from that. I wonder if he's just done.
I mean, that's like, that wasn't like, oh, he was a little bit of a creep to a girl on a date once. That was like, he likes to bite people and fetishizes eating them. There was a whole
Yeah,
documentary. Apparently, I didn't see it, but there was some documentary that came out about him that was like the story of Army Hammer's, you know, revolting. It was just like, I don't know, man. I don't know there's any coming back. I
yeah,
think he
it's
might.
pretty. Of all the accusations, I mean, that's up there.
Yeah. Well, at least he can chill with Marv Albert now. The two of them can hang out or
There
something.
you go. Yeah, secret society.
People were like, well, culture is like really unwokening now. You know, it's like, oh yeah, if it unwoken and if it does that so much that people can come back from cannibalism, I don't think that it was a good thing.
Also, Unwokenins sounds like an awesome faction from Dune that we never got.
Yeah, like
The Unwokenins.
not the Southerners, but the
No, we are the Unwokenins. I can see it with like their paramilitary group.
yeah. I mean, man, yeah. So I do like Lee Pace a lot, and he's someone who, well, you know, okay. So someone had asked me in one of my streams. They asked why I didn't make Black Marrow more wolf-like why he looks like a guy in makeup.
Hmm.
And I was like, well, that's very intentional because if I made him like, I wanted to design him in a way that if anybody were ever to adapt it, it would be like,
Hmm.
oh, you just get some good makeup on an actor.
Oh, I see.
Like
Yeah,
I didn't want to leave
yeah.
a door open where it's like, you know, like if I go really stylized, then I'm basically creating a greater chance that an adaptation would like take wild liberties with the design, because they're going to be like, well, this doesn't work on screen anyway, we got to change it. But if I make it look like it's already concept art for a character in costume,
Mm,
then they don't have much of an excuse to deviate too much from my design.
that's a good idea. Yeah.
You
And I
know.
mean the design works. It's not like it's sacrificing anything.
Oh no, I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I definitely I preferred that. I didn't want to draw a wolf face with a cowboy hat on. I didn't
Yeah,
want
of
to do that at
course.
all.
Something about giving it a snout takes away a lot of the emotive humanity that you need for a relatable character.
Yeah, yeah. It's
But
I didn't want it to be like it's just a dog head on a guy. It's just like
it's also makes it a fucking nightmare to draw because of the foreshortening. It's just like it introduces a whole bunch of issues that are not necessary.
yes, I do not want to deal with that. I had to deal with that for a different comic I did for this book I did years ago. I created a character that was like a literally like he was like a Roman centurion kind of thing,
Mm,
but he had a head of a dog, and it was like I dreaded drawing his face from every angle because it's like 3/4 turn. Okay, the cone shape snout. It's just like it just was too much.
yeah,
But yeah,
yeah,
the whole point of Black Mirror is he's supposed to look like the old school Universal Pictures Wolfman, but as a
yeah,
cowboy. Yeah, like that's it.
which is great.
Thank you. Yeah, but people were shocked by that answer. Like I was in an interview, I think it was on a podcast I was on, and someone had asked me about it. And I was like, yeah, I just that's because I'm thinking about if this is adapted. You know, I
Mm.
don't want people to be like, oh well, you know this looks so crazy that we had to just start the design from the ground up. And it's like, no, you're not doing that.
It's like when 20th Century Fox kept changing the design for Beast in the X-Men movies.
Oh God, that's exactly what I'm thinking about. Yes.
Yeah, they came out the gate strong and they were like, Kelsey Grammer, he's Beast, and he looks exactly like Beast. And then they were like, actually, that's a little too expensive. Let's pull it back with Nicholas Hoult. And then they're like, yeah, let's lean a little more into the Kelsey. And then like, too expensive. Let's lean out of it and just paint a guy blue. And like it, yeah, it was a weird push and pull.
Oh, what did they end up doing with Nicholas Hoult that was different?
He basically he didn't have like the big hair like Kelsey Grammer had. He looked let me see if I can find a side by side. Kelsey Holt Beast. He looked a lot more human. The Nicholas Holt one looked a lot more human, which I guess you could attribute to like he's younger or whatever. But then they backtracked on it in the next one and they made him look a lot more like Kelsey Grammer's Beast, which is yeah, they just kept changing it over and over and over again. And now they've gone full CG back to Kelsey Grammer with an overlay of CG.
Oh, really? It's a CG. I thought they put him in makeup. I guess he doesn't want to do that at his age. He doesn't want to get all that makeup on. I'm sure.
It looks like it's CG. So this is here's oh, where do I even put this? I guess I'll send it to you in our chat if I can. Let me take a look here.
Edgar says, if you ever need a Black Mirror voice actor, I'd love to audition. It's one of my talents. Surprisingly, I don't know, Edgar. You're what 13? Your voice is that impressive?
Here's the evolution of him as Beast, and I feel like you're shooting for like number 2.
Where is it? Where should I look
Right
for my
there,
names?
right there in the Google chat.
There it is. Okay. Number 2 is yeah, that's the vibe. Well, actually,
Yeah.
number 3 kind of works too because it's a little bit sexier. I think.
Oh, sorry. No. By number 3, I meant 2 of the beasts, not obviously Nicholas Hoult. I'm not counting as number 1.
Right, of course.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
the
So the
bottom
one in the
left.
middle, yeah, the middle beast, I think, is the one that you're kind of going for.
That's yeah. That's almost like if you change his color, that's basically Black Mirror.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but they kept changing them because they were like, I don't know, they out of different directors or producers or something. But yeah, they looked very different. And then now I think Beast is entirely CG,
Because
but they might not even keep him.
the first one, he's got a kind of a kitty cat look, which is a little cute. But the
Yeah,
second one, I like that he looks because like I mean, I kind of unintentionally made Black Mirror a thirst trap. So,
yeah. As you should.
I wasn't even trying to, but like I didn't realize until halfway through. I was like, oh, this is like a thing because I was noticing I have way more female readers than anything else I've ever done. Like
Mhm.
way more. Um, and I was just like, all right, I'm gonna lean into this, you know. But yeah, I definitely wanted like a bit of a like a handsome Victorian character kind of look. But
Sure.
yeah, that number 2, you're right. That is. Definitely that's like, I mean, I think that looks good for Beast too, though, because it's like
It does. It looks very good.
you can see the character emoting. You can see like because the whole point is, people who know X-Men, like Beast is supposed to be this guy who's got like he's got the heart of a poet. You got to
I
be
just
able to
sent
see
you
the
the
language.
I sent you the two different Kelsey Grammer ones, and it's like the new CG one doesn't look anywhere near as good as the practical one. It's like crazy. Even though they can do like the Hulk and crazy good CG, that beast looks like he's made out of rubber.
I gotta see it. I can't wait. Oh, this is from which movie?
It's from the end of the Marvels. There's like a multiverse tease where what's her name? Photon? I can't remember what her name is. She ends up in the X-Men 99 universe.
Oh,
And they didn't want to use Kelsey Grammer, so they made a CG Kelsey Grammer, and it looks real bad.
wow. Yeah. I'm not. I mean, they got the design is on point, but the execution graphically is going to be a shit show.
Yeah,
Do you know
but they might have also
Sorry, go ahead.
abandoned that. I don't know. They
The
might have.
original X-Men, the Bryan Singer X-Men, they actually were very close to having a CGI beast in that.
Really?
Yeah, they said, oh, we don't have the budget, but they had to write him out of the movie, but it was going to be a CGI beast, and like 1999, they were going to do that.
Hmm.
They were talking it over, and like, can you imagine what that would look like? That would have aged so badly.
Do you think that's why they? Do you think that's why they got rid of Colossus?
Oh yeah, probably.
He's in one scene
In
of
X
like
two.
X2, but also like Terminator 2 came out like 15 years before that or 10 years before that.
Yeah.
And like they doing a metal guy was like we solved it. Like I don't know why that was such a big deal.
Yeah, I don't know. But and this is just me. I don't know that this is actually anywhere what they were thinking, but I thought it might have something to do with the fact that the T1000 moves in a way that's kind of unnatural, but it works because it's like
Oh,
it's a
sure.
different life form. But if you have
Yeah,
Colossus walking around like that while casually having conversations, it
that
probably
makes sense because he's not a robot
yeah
and
he's
robotic movements felt because it was a robot. Sure.
yeah.
That
So
makes sense.
that's just my thought about it. I don't know if it might have been budget. I actually thought Colossus got played down in some of the future movies because Hugh Jackman had like top billing, like he's just the big draw.
Hmm.
And if you like have another guy in there who's gonna like take the lead, because like it's very hard for Colossus with the way that character's written and drawn. It's very hard for him to not uh, take the leading man role. Like he's just
Yeah.
he's a very
The biggest
classical
the
hero
biggest
character. Sorry, go on.
no, sorry, there's a slight delay, so I keep interrupting you. I'm
No,
very sorry.
you're not at all.
Um, the biggest missed opportunity for me for Deadpool and Wolverine was we didn't get to see the authentic Colossus from the Deadpool movies interact with the authentic Wolverine.
Oh yeah, that's
I
true.
was waiting. I was waiting for that the whole time. I was like, are they going to do like a fastball thing, or at least have them talk or something? I was like, be very cool to see two members of the team drawn comic accurate with each other, and they didn't end up doing it.
Yeah, that is a shame. But it is a I mean, I think it seems like Hugh Jackman is here to stay now. So
Yeah, I think he's in at least three movies coming up. I don't know if they've confirmed that he's Wolverine in the new X-Men franchise, but he might be.
yeah, I know that they got that and the Spider-Men, the multiple Spider-Men are coming back too, I
Yep,
believe.
they're coming back.
It's going to be really interesting to see them. I mean, I think if they handle it as well as they handled No Way Home,
Mm.
I think we're at least going to have a really fun movie.
Oh, yeah, it'll be fun. The Spider-Man movies seem to be like an ace in the hole for them. They haven't really missed on any of those.
Yeah, I think that's true. They've. I mean, the one Far From Home wasn't my favorite, but it was by no means a bad film.
Yeah, it was. It's. I think it's the weakest of the three, but the fact that they found a way to make Mysterio believable is insane to me.
Yes.
I was like, how did you
Yeah.
do this? Like, this is crazy that you made Mysterio a thing that could plausibly happen in this universe. Like, that's nuts.
I thought the design. I mean, I loved seeing the actual
So
costume.
good.
I just don't know why we have to fight. I mean, like when he when Deadpool takes off, he peeks at Wolverine's costume and he goes, "Well, that only took 20 fucking years." Like
Yeah, really.
that's how I felt. Yeah, I was like, "Yes."
I loved, yeah, that design they did for Mysterio is one of my favorite things in the entire cinematic universe
Tell
that
me
they've
why.
done. It's it's so it's so out there compared to all the other stuff, but it still feels like it belongs in there. And it's got little pieces of all the stuff they've done. Like it's got elements of Thor and elements of Iron Man and elements of Doctor Strange. And like
Hmm.
they did that very intentionally. Like in the art book, they're like Beck is a guy who's been studying the Avengers and is trying to rip them off. So to seem familiar and to seem likable to people, he's taking elements of all their designs and personas and putting them into this thing to make it more recognizable and believable for people to accept it.
That
So
is cool.
there's all these little nods to all these other characters. So it feels like it belongs in that world, but it's such a ridiculous design. It's great.
Yeah, that's cool. I didn't know that. I didn't know that that was their design, like their input, their goal with this. But that's really cool. That makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's taken like he's got like the diagonal chainmail elements from Thor. He's got the cape. He's got the little eyeball pauldrons that feel very Doctor Strange's necklace. He's got like I can't remember all of them, but there's a breakdown in the book of like all the little things they took from other characters. But yeah.
Wow, that's really cool. I thought Jake Gyllenhaal, right? Jake Gyllenhaal.
Yeah.
I thought he was. I was very surprised at that casting, and then I was like, no, this is great.
Yeah, it was very interesting, especially since I didn't realize he was supposed to be or was almost Spider-Man in the Raimi movies,
Yeah, yeah.
which is very funny.
And Timothy Chalamet was apparently almost Spider-Man with these new films. He was very close to getting cast in that.
I wonder who he's going to end up. He hasn't been in the MCU yet, right? I wonder who he's going to end up being.
Yeah, I would. I don't know. Is he on board? Is that what happened? He was cast in something.
No, not yet. But I'm just wondering. Eventually, it feels like they're going to get everybody to be in something. I'm just wondering what he's going to be in.
Yeah, it's true. It's gonna be like. It's gonna be like. What was that movie Gosford Park where they joked about how every English person in films is in it?
Hmm.
That's gonna be what Marvel is for, I guess, the rest of Hollywood.
That's what it feels like. Yeah. I'm
Wow.
trying to think of who I'd cast him as. I think they already cast Wiccan, but I didn't watch Agatha.
No, I can't be bothered to watch anything else right now until it gets like shining good reviews. I really don't want to watch anything that they're putting out.
The reviews coming out for Brave New World are not good. They're all like six. Even like the very shill YouTube channels that are like I love everything Marvel are giving it like sevens and sixes.
mm,
It's like eh.
yeah, it's like that's a bummer. I mean, well, I think we all kind of knew it wasn't going to be like the disaster signals were up in the sky for quite a bit, but
Mm,
there are YouTube channels on the other side of it that are just like just hoping it fails and just being like, ah, yes, I can taste its descent, you know.
yeah. I'm not that extreme in the hate, but it's I don't know. It's just shocking to me that it feels like they should have just canceled it after that many things going wrong and just we're gonna make another Captain America thing later, but like we had to scrap this.
Well, that's what a lot of people were saying. They should have given it the Batgirl treatment
Yeah.
and just been like, collect the insurance and. But I think because there was such a public, you know, thing surrounding the movie, they're like, well, what do we do? We can't just,
Right.
But I don't know. They did with Batgirl, and people laughed at it, but generally they're like kind of happy that they did.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what. I feel like they just like, from what I heard, they knew it was a train wreck, and they're just like, well, we just have to release it. That's just what we got to do.
Right.
Oh, hey, what's up, Gross Girl?
They must be banking everything on Fantastic Four.
Yeah, well, I mean, it does look good.
Yeah,
That
the
trailer was.
look is very, very good. The look and the vibe is very, very, very good.
Who's directing this one? It's not the Russos, right?
Tim Story, the guy who did The Incredibles.
The Incredible, wasn't that Bradley Bird?
Oh fuck, maybe it was Brit. Yeah, who's directing this? No, Tim Story did the Fantastic Four movies in the '90s.
Ah,
Sorry, 2000s.
yeah, I got you.
I don't
Jacobo
think.
says he wanted a shorter Wolverine. Yeah, I would have liked to have at some point seen an accurate, and it doesn't have to be like 4 feet tall, but definitely like the vibe of a shorter guy is. Although I've come to really like Hugh Jackman in the role.
Matt Shackman, what's he done?
Who is that even?
Matt Shackman. Oh boy, this doesn't bode well. Oh no, what's his IMDb? Oh no, he did WandaVision, and
Great.
he did some Game of Thrones. He did some The Great. The Great is a good show, but I don't see a lot of big budget movie stuff on here. Uh-oh. He did some of The Boys. All right, he's a TV guy. Oh boy. Uh-oh. Hopefully it's one of those situations where they had most of the movie planned out by the committee and then they handed it to a director, but that doesn't feel good to me. Uh-oh. Well, anyway,
You're like
Fantastic
that
Four.
meme. You're like that meme of that guy going, "Oh boy, oh no, oh god, oh boy." What's that
I
from that
mean,
old
we'll
movie?
see. We'll see what happens. Hopefully it's good. Yeah, I hope.
you sound you sound you sound very confident. I gotta say.
I just don't understand why we don't hire directors. I understand it's to save money. I get it. I get that. But like, I don't know. It feels like we should have learned a lesson by now.
I don't really get it either because it's like you have this monstrous budget.
Yeah.
If you have an issue with the spending, like maybe remove some, cut some other corners and just hire a really great director who can, yeah. But the casting is really great. I like what's his face as the Thing from The Bear.
Right.
I think that's one of the best casting choices I've seen in a while.
Here's the important thing. Who wrote the script? Let's take a look.
That is important.
Let's take a look. Mm-hmm. Come on. Come on. Let's take a look. Matt Shackman. Give me the IMDb. Give it to me. Give me that list of people. Man, those costumes are so good. They're so exactly cheesy enough to be exactly what I want.
The colors are nice.
Peter Cameron, Josh Fritt, 3 writers. Oof. Okay. Jeff Kaplan. All right. Okay. Let me check out Josh Friedman. Let's take a look. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, War of the Worlds, Terminator Dark Fate. Let's check out writer number 3, Peter Cameron. What do we got? We got WandaVision, Agatha All Along, Werewolf by Night, Moon Knight, Carnival Row. Oh, well, anyway, Galactus is going to look really good. Scared. A little scared now. I'm a little scared now.
I've really lost my faith in Marvel recently, so I don't feel that disappointment or anxiety anymore about a movie. I'm just like, yeah, it'll probably, I don't know. I don't know if I don't want to say that they don't know how to make movies anymore, but it feels like they've had so many failures in a row that I from what I heard, after Deadpool and Wolverine came out, there were supposedly mass firings that they were like, okay, we have to get rid of some of the dead weight the company's carrying around, and then
it's the Rocky 3 thing. They won and they were on top and they got lazy. And now Mr. T's coming and he's hungry and he's like, you got lazy. Victory has defeated you. It's the Bane thing.
That's and then there's that great scene where Apollo Creed takes Rocky to that gym where he's the only white guy.
Yeah.
And he's like, look at their eyes, look at how hungry they are. You're not hungry no more.
Mm-hmm. I think that's what it is. I think they were on top a little too long and they started to think they were too big to fail. And they were like, we're just printing money. And then I think they got a little complacent.
But I think in that complacency, they stopped seeking out the best talent.
Oh, 100%. Because I think they thought that the Marvel branding was enough to sell it as opposed to the people attached to it.
Yeah.
They need someone like a Jon Favreau or something to come in and, do a whole wave of things that are connected and, one person's vision.
Oh, Okay. According to Gross Girl, I'm super quiet again. I can't figure out this mic, guys. I don't know what's going on. I'm having so much trouble getting this mic to just do what I want. It's driving me crazy. Let me see. Yeah, no, it's set up. Is this better? There you go. I'm gonna hold it real close, guys. I'm gonna cozy up with this baby. Yeah, you can hear the pain in Dan's voice escalating, says Edgar. That's definitely true.
Yep.
I don't know. I mean, I just I can't quite. I know that like even when you change course at a big company like that, it takes a while for that to like reflect in the movies because some of that stuff is already in production for a while, and
Yeah.
so I don't know if this is a result of the old regime or what. You know.
I mean, at this point, I feel like they should have one of the villains win and destroy the universe and then just start rebuilding. I feel like that would be the shock and awe thing to do.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
Just, yeah, it's over. Like, have somebody win and then go, okay, well.
Do you think? Oh wait, let me just. Oh, my audio was great yesterday. What changed? I didn't. I didn't change anything, Gross Girl. I don't know what's happened. It's like now it's weak again. Here, let me. Okay, now I don't know. I don't know. But do you think, Dan, that they Disney will ever change they'll ever like declare that the continuity from the sequels, they'll just decanonize it? Do you think they'll ever do that, the Kurtzman thing?
Do I think Disney will decanonize Marvel stuff the
No,
way
Star Wars.
Star Trek did? Oh, I could see it happening. Yeah, I think it could. I think it was such a overwhelming failure financially for them. I mean, they did make money, but they were nowhere near the money they thought they were going to make. I could see them. The problem is that everyone who could be in a new sequel trilogy, they're all dying. It's like we got Harrison Ford and we got Mark Hamill, but like for how long? And it's like, what are you going to do? Are you just going to skip over it and just, there is no resolution to Luke's story? Are you going to make a CG Luke? What are you going to do? I don't know. I could see potentially maybe in 10 years or something, someone coming in and saying these are no longer part of the canon. These are like the problem is they treat Star Wars different than they treat other IPs. They'd have to come up with an in-universe reason for it to not be canon, like a multiverse, but they wouldn't want to call it a multiverse because I don't think they want to touch that concept with that IP.
Well, there was a rumor, but I think the rumor ended up not being true, but it would have been a good solution, which was they were going to do this thing. So the Ahsoka TV show had not yet aired, and people were hopeful that this rumor about it would be true, which ended up not being true. But it was that Ahsoka, she discovers this like veil of the Force, where you can get where it's like you can almost access other timelines and whatever. And
the world between worlds they call it.
Yeah, and essentially Palpatine had accessed it, and that's why he keeps popping up. That's how he returns. Is that he basically keeps like using the veil of the Force to try to so that she then they were building up supposedly with the Ahsoka show was going to lead into like a Luke Skywalker thing, and the Mandalorian, that they were all going to kind of have an Avengers thing where they eventually team up to find a way to like through the veil of the Force like find Palpatine and kill him, and and then that would then reset the timeline and erase the sequel trilogy.
I think so. Now I'm thinking about it more now that you brought up the Mandalorian. I'm going to go back on what I said a minute ago. I don't think they're ever going to decanonize it, because to do that, they'd have to decanonize all the other hits that came after it, because The Mandalorian was a backdoor way for them to try and save the plot holes in the sequel trilogy. Like, people didn't realize it till like season 2, but the entire point of The Mandalorian is that Grogu is like the reason that Palpatine is being cloned.
Mm-hmm.
Like the whole thing is trying to explain the somehow Palpatine return meme line. And like that's essentially the background plot of that entire show, is that all the Empire guys are trying to clone Palpatine in the background to explain what happens in the fucking, Rise of Skywalker.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think they can decanonize it without decanonizing all that other shit too.
Yeah, no, I meant I guess I thought I was like, if they ever did it, they'd have to scrap their entire Star Wars Disney universe, really.
Yeah, they'd have to start over, which I don't know. I don't know if they would ever admit defeat that badly. I think Disney's too proud to admit defeat like that.
Hmm.
But maybe, I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing them. I think what they're going to do is just keep trying to create new things to patch it up. It's like putting band-aids on like a leaky canoe. They're just going to keep making band-aids instead
Yeah,
of getting a new building a new boat.
which
They're
is
just
only
going to
going to
keep
make the continuity more insane.
more and more fucked. Yeah, it's just going to keep going out of control.
Yeah, this
But
guy, this YouTuber Echo Chamberlain, uh, was doing a video where he was explaining Star Wars continuity as it currently exists based on what they've done, and just
sure,
using his like, and doesn't embellish. He just explains it as it is, and it's like as a way of making a point about how fucked the continuity is, where
yeah,
it's like makes no sense, and parts of it are like weirdly repetitive because people are just telling the same story and over and over. So now officially in the continuity, the same thing happens 3 generations in a row, which is like that kind of thing. Something I hated, something I really can't stand. And it's not just the sequels, it's also even in the extended universe books. I
mm,
really don't like how often Jedi become Sith. They beat
it's the
that
worst.
drum. They beat that drum so much that I was like, you guys are making a really good case for why there just should not be any Jedi. Like
Yeah, really. Yeah.
it's like
It's like if 50% of nuclear reactors had meltdowns, we wouldn't have nuclear reactors.
yeah.
It's like we wouldn't. It's like, okay, well, no. Yeah, I don't know. It's such a shame not to beat this horse again, but like the further away we get from The Force Awakens coming out, the more I'm like, they should have just gone with the original script idea. It would have been so much better. Like, I didn't think it was the best at the time, but in retrospect, compared to what we got, like having Rey and Snoke both be failed Palpatine clones that are fighting over, the idea of legacy and what it means to be an individual and as a clone a person and who gets to have the Force and all that stuff. Like having that be the through line of like she's a clone and she's rejecting her legacy, whereas Snoke is also a clone and he's trying to hold on to it. That would have been great. Just do that. And then you don't have to have any of this shit that happened happen and everything would have been fine. And like we could have just kept going in a direction that wasn't hampered by trying to explain all this insane bullshit. But
Yeah.
I don't know, man, what an insane series of events. What a absolute failure of a way to execute a cinematic universe.
Yeah, and it just the I know that I've also talked about this a lot, so I apologize if everybody is tired of hearing me get into this. But dear God, the sheer lack of imagination
Mm.
and like I've never seen something so incredibly mishandled. Like I just can't
And like
believe.
with such a good cast, like Daisy Ridley was great.
Yeah,
Poe, Finn and Poe, all the actors, fantastic. Everyone in the movie did a really good job with what they were given, and like good music, good director,
yeah. John
bad
Williams coming back to
screenwriter.
the score.
Yeah,
Yeah,
great. Like fantastic art team. What they chose to use and not use, maybe not the best choices, but
hmm,
like everything was there. It was all good. Everybody was doing a good job, and it's just, man, what just a bad, just poor planning,
yeah.
just making it up as you go, literally.
Well, even just the starting idea of like, hey, instead of continuing the story, let's do a soft reboot of the first film, and
Yeah,
thus render the original trilogy pointless by having everything be like, oh yeah, they defeat the Empire for like 10 minutes. It's like that's
yeah,
a terrible idea. That's such,
yeah. Very bad idea.
and it's like J.J. Abrams is someone who I would have thought would obviously understand that a Star Wars fan would want to see those characters grow and change, and they wanted that there's certain conventions that work for a reason. Like they want to see Luke as a dull Jedi master, like all that
Mhm.
stuff. And they were just like every opportunity they had to like give people something that they would have wanted, they just kept being like, nah.
They just wanted it to be as safe as possible, which is what that first movie was.
Yeah.
You know, but
I guess I never really understood that argument though, because is that really safer than like Luke as a Yoda type character?
remaking a thing that already
I
like
see.
soft rebooting a thing is
Yeah.
always going to be safer than taking any kind of risk to a corporate board.
Yeah. Okay. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, it's always going to be, remaking a thing and just saying here it is again with new names is always going to be safer because it's proven. Changing anything is always going to be seen as more of a risk, even though that sucks. But it's also because, I don't know, at the time, like, I think people are more nostalgic about them now, but at the time, the prequels had a lot of stigma.
Oh yeah,
And
now people, I see it referenced positively all the time.
yeah, because the people that grew up with it are now old enough to talk about their nostalgia for it, I think. But it's for people where those were their first Star Wars movies, I think there's a lot more love for them. Whereas for people that those were their fourth, fifth, and sixth Star Wars movies, there was a lot of hate. But I think if that was your entry point into that universe, I think there's a lot more people who appreciated what was there.
Yeah, I
But
mean, if you were like 6 years old when you saw, the Attack of the Clones, like, yeah, that shit is
yeah,
dope to you. It's like,
yeah. If I'd never seen the original trilogy and I went and I saw Phantom Menace, it was probably the craziest thing I'd ever seen on a movie screen in
yeah,
terms of like, scope and special effects and music. And and you're a kid, you don't understand that the acting's bad. Like you're a child.
yeah, you're not like six being like, this dialogue is very wooden.
Yeah, and you're like, Yahoo, let's try spinning. That's a good trick. And you're like, I'm the kid. There I am. Like I can be in an adventure too. Like it was all very, very, I don't know. I don't want to say cynical, but there was a lot of like sort of like what he did with the Ewoks to sell toys. There was a lot of very intentional choices made to get the biggest audience possible and, hold on to it. But yeah, I don't know. All Disney's choices were get as far away from the prequels as possible and reinvent this universe as what it was in the original trilogy, which is what that first movie did. They accomplished that. The problem is with everything that came after it. They didn't do anything new. They didn't know what to do, and they had no plan, which is the most shocking part from the people that did the fucking Avengers. It's like,
Yeah,
how do you not plan it out? Like you guys already did this once. Like
yeah,
what are you doing?
yeah.
But yeah,
Oh, you see, Gross Gross says, I used to love Star Wars. The pulp that came with the original trilogy is something they'll never be able to repeat. That's very true.
yeah.
There's something about those old pulp, like the books and the comics. I used to love the comics, dude.
Hmm.
I had Splinter of the Mind's Eye, which was
Yep.
it was going to be the sequel. If
I
the
know that one.
Yeah, and it's drawn by the incredible Chris Sprouse, which is beautiful.
I
Um,
had the magazine with the comic in it where it was like exploring Boba Fett's original past, and he was like a judge on a prison planet named Jaster Muriel.
oh, that's a really cool setup for him. He was a corrupt judge.
Yeah, he was a corrupt judge on a prison planet.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I was like, that's cool. But yeah, all that shit's out the window.
There
But
was also one of my favorites, which is a little more obscure. Have you ever heard of the? I think it was called Tales of the Jedi.
yeah,
Uh, I believe that's the name of it because I haven't read it in like 20 years. But it was essentially it was. Oh no, I'm thinking Knights of the Old Republic. That was the comic that I freaked out about, which was it was about the Jedi from like thousands of years before A New Hope, right?
hmm,
And because of that, they had all this creative freedom because it was this thousands of years ago. And if you were a kid like me, where for you, for me, the whole thing was a Jedi. I was like, I just want to see lightsabers and like sword fights in space. Like it's so cool. And I
yeah,
remember that comic like opened up something in my brain because it was extended universe, and because it was a particular sort of high fantasy approach, because it was like the ancient Jedi, the art style of the comic. I remember parts of it really had the look and feel of like French comics.
that's rad.
So it had like watercolor and like line art, like really cool, like old school 90s, 80s comics looks where like you can tell they just let the artists do what they wanted.
Yeah,
And it just looked beautiful. I remember like seeing that and just I was so in love with that world. I couldn't get enough of it, man. I was like devouring it.
I really, really miss magazine culture in like the late 80s, early
Oh
90s,
yeah.
where these IPs that they were popular enough to have a fan base, but they weren't popular enough that people were scared of fucking them up. Like it was so cool to get like a Nintendo Power magazine, and inside the magazine it was like, there's a new Zelda game and here's a comic that we wrote that's only in this magazine about the Zelda universe. And it's
Mhm.
like none of that stuff is true to any of the lore now, but at the time it was this weird pulpy freedom of like they were just letting people run wild with these universes and these characters and just
Yeah.
come up with whatever the fuck they thought was cool.
Hmm.
And I really miss that. You never know what you're going to get. It's not bogged down by lore necessarily. It's just a bunch of
Yeah.
creative people having fun with things. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I agree with that. That's I don't know. I don't know if you get this feeling yourself, but for me, I sometimes I sometimes wonder if I was like born in the wrong time, you know?
yeah, yeah. I feel that for
Yeah,
sure.
where you're just like, man, like, cuz I was just watching a thing about comics in the 90s and and just like how, Rob Liefeld just like basically walked in and got a job,
Hmm.
and it's just like it just drives me crazy. And like
I know.
how much power he had to just like do what he wanted, and like, and I just was like, man, if I had been in that time, I probably would have had a, a different, I mean, like, I'm happy with my career. It's going pretty well, but like I might have been a very wealthy person if I had been a generation sooner. And I think that's true. I think a lot of people feel that when they look at the comic industry, for example.
Yeah, I think so too. I think especially now that it's like there was a golden age and a silver age, and then we already had a renaissance, and it's like, what do you do after that? Like it's weird to be in an era where comic IPs are more popular than they ever have been, but comic books, the art form, are essentially like dying.
Yeah.
And it's very weird that that's the thing where like these Marvel movies are the biggest money making franchises in like the history of cinema, but nobody's buying the comic books. It's very, very weird.
Yeah. And it's not even because people don't like comics, because other comics are selling. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I know Image still does consistently really well. I know that manga like absolutely destroys the
Yeah,
American
manga
market.
finally figured that out. They cracked that. They tried to crack that for like 20 years and they finally cracked it.
Yeah. What do you think it was that changed?
I think it was Adult Swim.
Oh, interesting. Yeah,
I
because
think it
they
was
would,
Adult Swim.
because they had
Yeah,
anime on there.
I think Adult Swim forcing anime into the rotation. Because I remember specifically there was a moment where like after Inuyasha was on TV and like Rurouni Kenshin was on TV, I remember they opened the manga section in Borders at my local mall, and they had never had that before, and it coincided almost exactly with that happening. And then it just got bigger and bigger and bigger, and I think honestly it was Adult Swim that did it, and that's what got the ball rolling.
Yeah.
I think like YouTube and like social media, obviously, that like put kerosene on the fire because people that were passionate about that could find their other niche community members and grow the communities in an organic way. And I think as a result of that, the shame and the stigma that used to be around manga and anime went away really, really fast. Um, but yeah, I think it started with Adult Swim. I think that was the kind of the ground zero for manga becoming a thing
Yeah.
in the West.
Yeah, I could see that. And some of it, I mean, some of it's been good for comics because people, it's just like for a lot of comics, you want people going to the comic shop,
Yeah,
and I think there's been a lot of indie American guys who've been really pissed at the decline in quality that Marvel and DC have had, because it's really hurt all of us. Because
yeah,
if you have an indie book, I have Black Marrow at a few comic shops, and like, for me, like, he's not super well known yet, and it's like, if you're someone who regularly is buying like Absolute Batman or something,
mhm,
what the market of comic shops for years when they were healthy was, you'd go in, you'd get the books that you always get, okay, cool, Batman's out, Wonder Woman's out, Spider-Man, cool, and then you hold them in your hand and you go, what else is out? And then you look at the
mhm.
shelf and then you see these indie books and you're like, oh yeah, you know what, I'll try this, the art looks pretty cool, I never heard of this guy, but I'll. And there was like this, it was beautiful, it was like the perfect example of like, like trickle down economics, which is really
Yeah,
funny,
yeah,
that it works so well in that particular, but I'm not making an argument for it overall, guys, because I don't know anything about it, but in that particular setting it works really well, because like, the big boys get taken care of, and then the little guys, and then that economy just works and works, because then that indie book gets more popular, it rises to the
yeah,
top, that becomes a regular book, and the people, it's just this nice loop of notoriety. But then, I don't know if you've seen some of the, I mean, like, they're producing some good comics and some of them are great, but Marvel and DC have also, like, they've kind of done what the Disney Marvel guys have done, where they've chosen to make certain things a priority over quality. Let's put it that way.
mhm.
And it's turned away a ton of readers. and that's helped kill the market. And then as a result, the independent guys, the smaller companies, are also suffering because we're just not getting as many people in the shops anymore. Because people are like, you know what? I gave this new writer a chance for like 12 issues. I'm not enjoying this, and I'm done.
Yeah.
So they're like, I'm just going to go buy graphic novels on Amazon of like things that came out 30 years ago that I want to read, which is like, and I say this because I'm one of those people. Like I'm scouring the internet for like old comics now because that stuff is like really fun. And
It's like the massive influx of Berserk fans all of a sudden the past few years. It's like people are just discovering these things that have been around forever for the first time.
yeah, I cannot believe that I still haven't read all of Berserk, but I have to get the graphic novel. I had a PDF of it, but I was like, I want to read this in my hand. And I cannot believe I've never read all of Berserk.
I think the other thing, I think this also came from Adult Swim, but I think the other thing, I think it started with Adult Swim. I think the other thing is that manga figured out that they could market a comic to females.
Yeah.
And like comics always struggled with that because the superhero genre was like overwhelmingly male dominated, but manga, especially like the romance mangas and like I forget the term, when you get like a schoolgirl is transported to like a fantasy world.
Oh, yeah.
There's a word, it's not isekai. What is it? I don't know what it is, but anyway, I think they figured out how to market it to girls, and because I'd say 90% of the manga section at like the local bookshop when I was a kid was like romance stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And like, yeah, I don't know. I think that started probably with Inuyasha.
Is Inuyasha the girl transported genre?
Yeah, she gets transported to like ancient Japan, and there's like magical creatures, and she's in love with this one who's like half dog, who's Inuyasha.
Yeah, okay.
And it's like them having a crush on each other begrudgingly while going on adventures, and his brother's even sexier and prettier than he is, and all the Bishonen stuff shows up. Like all that stuff, I feel like yeah, I don't know. They figured out how to market it to girls.
Yeah,
and I
specifically to younger girls.
Yeah, I think that was a big part of the success.
Yeah, I think. Well, yeah, for some reason, American comics seem to. Well, there's this thing that happens, and I think one of the reasons that Japan figured out how to market to men and women is that they seem to understand that men and women have somewhat different interests.
Yeah,
like
it seems to be
because they're not politicizing it. They're like, well, like some girls like things that involve very masculine stuff, and some guys like girly things. But generally speaking, you want to appeal to a female reader, you gotta you've seen the things that men and women consume, and we overlap, but we're also different. And like they're not running away from that. They're like, yeah, we're gonna make this full of crushes and boy girl drama and all that stuff, and like it's gonna appeal to a lot of teenage girls.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna have this comic like Berserk, which is like this hyper violent edgelord shit.
Well, the funniest thing about Berserk is that some of Miura's favorite stuff in the genre were the stuff that was targeted at girls. Like there's a ton of the reason Griffith looks so pretty, and the reason that he did the Golden Age arc with all the beautiful medieval tapestries and princesses and gowns and people dressed up and all that stuff is he was like a huge fan of this this female demographic manga that was like Princess Story or something. It had like a weird name. It was like some medieval themed thing about like a princess and a bunch of knights and stuff. He was a huge fan of that, and like a ton of the Golden Age came from that. But yeah, it's weird how many of the manga dudes were like, their favorite thing would be like something about like a soccer player, and then they'd do like some crazy post-apocalyptic fantasy thing. But yeah,
in one book, or you mean in different books?
In multiple, like the creator of something like Yu Yu Hakusho, like his favorite thing might be like some manga about like a basketball player.
Mm-hmm.
like has nothing to do with what he's creating. It's just they were so many weird subgenres of like stories that some were sports, some were romance, some were like period dramas, some were like very cutesy, chibi type things. Some were like the guy who did Ghost in the Shell, like huge into erotica. Like yeah, just a massive swathe of things that they were pulling from, and they were all kind of fans of all of them. So yeah, it's just interesting to see how many different genres manga covers, whereas comics, at least in the West, were very like you had superhero and you had like indie, and like that was kind of it.
Yeah. And it would, and the gulf between them was so big conceptually, because you were like, superhero story, as much as I love that stuff, it can be very cookie cutter sometimes.
Yeah.
So then you go to indie stuff and they're like, we're going to do the opposite. And some of this shit you won't even want to read because it's so vile or something. You know what I mean? Like they'll go really
Yeah.
crazy, or they'll go super like, it's indie, but it's like, here's a book about, a guy losing his virginity in college. And you're like, I still like science fiction, dang it. Like, I'm not here to
Yeah.
read about your sexual experience in college. Like, it's not what. So
You'd
your
find,
choice is like, what, Justice Society, or like so and so has his like awakening in freshman year. It's like, that's like not a very
yeah.
diversity of choices. But sorry, go on.
You'd occasionally find like the random comic store that had like I remember when I was growing up, there were like four genres of comic, I think. There were like superhero western stuff. There was the occasional manga that had been adapted into a comic format where it was like the trade, like, cheap paper, but they had scaled the images up to be like the format of like an X-Men comic. Like I
Yes.
remember that's how I found out about like Record of Lotus War.
Yes, you have that too. I have that.
Yeah, that.
I got the American, the westernized version first, and then I
Yeah.
finally got the actual manga years later. Sorry, continue.
I still have it. I remember finding it on a shelf, and then one night I stayed up way too late, and I saw the OVA on the Sci-Fi Channel at
Yep.
3 in the morning, and I was like, "This is an anime," and it like blew my mind.
Yeah.
But there were like four genres. There was like superhero stuff. There was imported Japanese manga stuff that had been converted into Western comic format. There were graphic novel indie things where like you'd see like From Hell, or you'd see like V for Vendetta or something like
Hmm.
very serious, and like this isn't a comic book, this is for adults, it's over here. Like Lost Girls, I remember, was like locked up because it was too hardcore for kids. You couldn't read Lost Girls, it
That's
was
the
too
Alan Moore one,
X-rated.
right?
Yeah, it's about Ozma, and it's like all the girls from all the children's stories, and they're like, it's very sapphic, I think. I
Yeah.
haven't read it, but I believe that's what it's about. and
Yeah.
um and then the fourth category was just like, I feel like it was all under an umbrella of stuff from France and Italy. It was all like weird art piece things and Mobius things and very horny things. And it was just like, that's all its own category of just like, kids weren't really into it. It was seen as more of like a serious art format. It
Mhm.
like, people respected it more, but it was always very weird and horny, and a lot of like the crossover with like heavy metal ended up in that category.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I remember going to comic shops and being like, you went too far down this one section, and you're like, oh man, these are just porn. These are literally
Yeah, a
porn.
lot of French comics were just very horny, weird things. Where like, you'd see the cover and you'd be like, "Oh, it's like a Star Wars thing. It's like Knights. It's something that looks like Metabarons or something."
Yeah.
And then you'd open it up, and like by page three, it's just tons of fucking, and you're like, "Oh, all right, this is just some horny nerd who's just, yeah, okay." But there were so many of those. There were so many of those, and they were always French and Italian. I don't know why.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, well, I think in France, especially, like comics are way more popular than they are in America.
Yeah,
So I think what happens is that the books that are very horny, as you say, they're the ones who kind of make it over, because those are the ones that are probably a little more guaranteed to sell with an American audience. But they probably do have a lot more genres represented in France. I know that they have like a lot of science fiction. They have a lot of westerns.
yeah,
Um, yeah, but yeah, I mean, Metabarons was like, that was one of the first times I'd seen like, oh, let's do a comic where every page is a painting.
yeah. That's just like, I'd never seen anything like that. When I found out about Metabarons, I was like, "Oh, this is a thing." Like, fuck, like this is insane.
It's literally just an illustration book with panels. It's like
Yeah,
it's not even
it's
cartoony,
crazy.
because people were like, "Oh, it's still cartoon." I was like, "Yeah, I guess it's cartooning that it is comics. You're a cartoonist to some extent, but it's like it's so beautifully. I mean, it's Travis Charest was the artist for a lot of it, and then apparently Jodorowsky fired him because he was. It took him weeks and weeks to do each page, maybe even months. It
Well,
was
yeah. I mean, look at the fucking pages. Like,
yeah,
yeah, I've been painting this snake for months. Like, Jesus. Like,
yeah. Travis Charest, I think, is a good example of someone who's like it's like realism is great, but it gets to a point where like, are you actually making the book better by like rendering every individual scale on this thing?
Mm,
And I think it's an interesting question to ask because the people have been arguing because like after he got fired, I think Juan Jimenez replaced him,
mhm.
which I don't know if you remember his art, but he's another great where he does like watercolor pages, like it's that French style,
Yeah, it's
and
insane.
it's beautiful, and he managed to stay with the deadline a little more, and it's slightly less it's not quite as photo real,
Mhm.
but stylistically in keeping enough that it still works. And someone had argued that it was like Juan Jimenez, he struck a better balance
Mm.
because Travis Charest was so realistic that it was like almost stiff. Like it was like they were like photographs. They were like,
Oh yeah, it's like the Alex Ross problem.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know what you're talking
where
about.
it's like it's a beautiful painting, but like is the
Yeah,
emotion, and like they were using, and I say this as I'm drawing a sword fight, but they were using the sword fights in Metabarons as an example because Juan
yeah,
Jimenez, he had a comparable level of detail and realism, but the violence felt really threatening. Whereas with Charest, it was like,
yeah.
it looked like two people posing beautifully, but it was just like not. It didn't feel. You didn't feel the carnage of it, where you're like, this is a dangerous situation.
That's how I felt the first time I read that Alex Ross book, Marvels, about the photographer who was in '60s New York.
Yeah.
It's like an in-universe story,
Hmm.
and it's every page is a beautiful painting with very well referenced beautiful things, and all the characters look real and they look like they could step out and they're just people in a room with you, but none of it is exciting. None of the action feels exciting. None of the It's not immersive. There's no weirdness. Galactus ends up feeling kind of small, weirdly, because
Mm.
it's very clearly just a normal guy wearing cardboard cutout,
Yeah.
and it's like that you took photos of, and it's like it's very impressive. The paintings on their own are very very good, but as a comic, it feels kind of like I'd compare it to watching like pre Harryhausen. What's his first name? I compare it to watching like special effects movies from pre Harryhausen, where it's like it's so lame and low budget that it's like it's Gorn, the day the Earth stood still, and it's like some just guy covered in tinfoil walks out of a spaceship. And you're like, oh, there's nothing threatening about this because it's just real. It's just a guy with a box on. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's very strange where like sometimes things that break reality and push that limit and aren't so photoreal can feel more real and feel more threatening and invoke more emotion.
Oh, by far. I think the thing I've always said is that you want to realism in and of itself is not always good because especially when you're working with a two-dimensional drawing, it's a still image, so you have to kind of trick the person's brain into thinking that it's real.
Yeah,
Oh, Gross Girl says Ray Harryhausen. Thank you, Gross Girl.
Ray Harryhausen, that's his name.
Um, and you have to kind of trick the brain to thinking it's real, and the way to do that is by exaggerating a lot of things to make it jump off the page, kind of like old silent movies where they'd put all this makeup on their eyes so that their eyes would pop to the back of the audience.
Hmm.
With comics, it's like it's a still image, so if you're not exaggerating it a little bit, it actually reads really flat. Like, if you and I are in a big argument, right? Let's say me
Hmm.
and Dan are arguing hardcore and we're in each other's faces, because that happens
Hmm.
all the time with me and Dan. We just
All
don't.
the time. Yeah, we scream. Yeah.
We fight like a married couple that's like right before they finally go public with a divorce.
Hmm.
Um, and like I'm like I'm bunching up my if you do that, if you take any part of a real argument between two people and you like take a freeze frame of it, it's very hard to really capture like a dynamic emotion because at any point like the subtlety of a person's face doesn't quite jump, you know what I mean, like unless it's in motion. You're watching someone, you're watching Nicolas Cage go berserk on screen, that's one thing, but most people, they like it's like in order to capture that in a comic you gotta like take everything and push it a little further, otherwise it just reads as too subtle.
Yeah.
Which is why I was looking at it. There was like a Daredevil anthology where they had Chris Samney. That remember that guy I sent you the inks for
Hmm.
like months ago, where he just does these like really beautiful, simple black and white pages.
Yeah.
He did a bunch of Daredevil stuff. He's famous for it, and it was him in the same anthology as like this other guy Lee Bermejo. who is very good. He's a painter, but the difference in how much I enjoyed it was just, it was immense, because it was like,
Yeah.
not the crap on Bermejo, I think he's great, but it was just like he's so focused on detail where you can see all the textures of the costume and all this stuff, and that's cool. But like, what I loved about Chris Samney was that he's like, everything jumps off the page, and because of that, you're not even thinking about the art as much. You're just thinking about what's happening, and ironically, you enjoy the art more because it's telling you, it's giving you so much emotional information, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyways.
It's how I feel about it's how I feel about like Frank Frazetta versus like Boris Vallejo.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And it's like they're both very similar. Clearly Vallejo is aping on Frazetta, but like
Who is? Yeah.
it's crazy to me. Like Vallejo's paintings are more finished, but they look less complete. It's
Yeah.
very weird. It's like, or maybe I had that backwards. They're more complete, but they look less finished. It's like
Yeah.
there's so much detail, and all the muscles are so shiny and oiled up, and
Mm-hmm.
everything's so, it's like hyper finished, but the energy is completely gone. There's no life to it at all. And then you look at Frazetta's stuff, and he's like, "Yeah, I don't know. They wanted cavemen. What, I painted it last night. Give me my paycheck. I'm gonna
Yeah.
go play baseball." And it's like greatest thing ever. It's like this insanely beautiful thing that is so forceful and imaginative, and the energy's there because he's painting it quickly. You can see the energy in the brushstrokes,
Yeah.
and there's like a frenzy to it because he wants it to be done. He doesn't want to be working on it because he wanted to do other things. And there's like you can feel the speed in the painting, but
Yeah. Well, I actually just talked about this on one of my other streams. I did a whole thing where I went off on about Frank Frazetta and how, in my opinion, he's like one of the greatest artists who probably ever lived. And I think
yeah.
what you're describing in his work, I've actually, I mean, I have a bias as a line art guy, but I attributed that to the fact that he was a draftsman first and foremost. Like he was a line art
Yeah.
guy. So like the speed of ink moving across a page is something that like I think in some ways prepped him so that when he was doing his paintings, he was kind of giving it the same approach.
Mhm.
And yeah, I definitely agree that like speed can add a lot to an image. Like doing it quickly can, you know, like he captures so much energy.
Yeah.
And yeah, I love the idea. I love knowing that it was like he was like, well, I really want to go outside before it's dark so I can play baseball.
Yeah.
What an absolute giga Chad! Like what an
He was the Goodwill Hunting of illustration. He was like, "I'm sorry it takes you guys so long to do this shit. Like I can do it with my eyes closed." Like he didn't want to be a genius. He just
yeah.
wanted to fucking go hang out and be with the bros. But like yeah,
He's totally Goodwill. Yeah, that
he's
works
Goodwill Hunting
perfectly.
of illustration, 100%. That's what he is.
He's
He's
like,
just like,
yeah,
I didn't ask for this, but whatever. Like I'm sorry you don't have it, but
yeah. Where he's like, I'm sorry you can't do this right, but it's easy for me. This is all easy for
yeah,
me. Yeah, he's like screaming.
yeah. I'm picturing him at the art academy, just like yelling that at people because he wants to go play baseball.
Yeah, the fact that like a lot of people don't know this, but like earlier in his career, the Conan the Barbarian paintings were modeled after, like he used himself as a reference.
Yes, and the fucking all the women, all the famous Frazetta women, that's his wife.
Wow, I didn't actually know that part.
Yeah.
Yeah,
She was like she modeled for a ton of his paintings and he's done a lot of portraits of her. Just, she's the girl in like all those paintings.
yeah. So anyone listening who has an inferiority complex with artists of the past, just remember that not only is Frazetta better than all of us, he was also
Yeah.
hotter than a lot of us.
He's like, I'm gonna go take off my shirt and paint myself in the mirror and make a bunch of money off a painting of it and then fuck my hot wife and play baseball. It's like, what do you, this is whole life. It's just, yeah, it's
Yeah,
insane.
he was just 30 years of nothing but net was that dude's life. Just
Yeah. And then he had a stroke and he couldn't use his hand anymore. So he retrained himself with his other hand. And the stuff was even better than the stuff he was doing with his first hand.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, yeah.
Yeah, have you seen those memes where they have like the huge, it's like it looks like the Shiba Inu and there's the really big muscular one and that represents
Yes.
the past, and then the little one who's like the person now complaining.
Mm-hmm.
There's one that says like Frank Frazetta, learning to, it's like the big muscular dog, and it's like Frank Frazetta learning to paint with his non-dominant hand after a stroke, like overnight, because he literally did
Yeah.
it like overnight. And then the other one is the little Shiba Inu, and it's like, I have trouble drawing eyes or something like that. Like
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
it's like embarrassing.
it's so funny.
Yeah,
But yeah, no, he's I don't know. I always go back to the him versus Boris Vallejo, where it's like, okay, they're both very accomplished painters, but it's like less can be more. And especially if you're going for energy, if you're going for something that like jumps off the page,
hmm
the urgency of something less finished can be very beneficial.
well, I think I agree, and I think some of that also is that Boris Vallejo is very much of his time. Like his
Mhm.
paintings feel very at home in the 80s and 90s, where
Yes.
we were really discovering the joy of like shiny muscles, you know.
Yeah.
Whereas Frazetta, he captured something that's really, I mean, it feels timeless. It's like it works. It works when no matter what time period you put that in, it's still fresh and fun to look at.
Yeah. And Boris Vallejo also he was on the cusp of that era where there had been things that were popular just long enough that people were growing out of it. And he was like, what if what if I take this comic book character that you've only seen, like, the Thing from Fantastic Four that you've only seen the Jack Kirby drawings of? What if I make the most realistic painting of him? What if he was real? What if he was in the room with you? Like, he was like one of the first people to do that,
hmm
which arguably is essentially like a seed that was planted that led into like, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The like,
Sure.
what if these things were in the room with you? What if, Galactus was a real guy? And it's like, yeah, he was one of the first people to really do that.
That's
What
a
if
good point.
He-Man was an actual dude and I'm going to paint Fabio naked with a He-Man belt? And it's like, okay, no, I don't love it, but it's, it was also from that era where like, I don't love it, but it's all I've got. So I have to love
I
it.
don't love it, but it's all I've got.
It's
That's
all
how.
I've got. Yeah.
Can you please review my next book with that and then put it on the inside jacket?
I don't love it. That's all I've got. No, there was an era. There was an era where nerds were starved for stuff because it wasn't popular enough to be mainstream. And it was kind of like whatever you're given is what you get. And like you can either stop being a nerd or you can embrace it and force yourself to love it. And I think a lot of Boris's work is in there where it's like, I don't love that this Ghost Rider is just a fucking, painting of a skull someone lit on fire with like every shine in the creased leather jacket imaginable. But
Mhm.
like, what else do I have? Like it's here it is. It's the only thing I'm gonna get that looks like realistic Ghost Rider. So I have to love it. No one else is gonna do it.
You're making a good case
But
for Boris Vallejo right now.
yeah, I mean, when I remember being a kid and seeing Boris's stuff, and I was like, that's awesome. But it was like a question. I was like, that's awesome, right? Like I think it was like Colossus. It was like a Colossus that was too chrome. It was like there were too many reflections in the chrome and it looked really silly. See if I can find the painting that I saw when I was a kid. And I remember seeing it and being like, that's cool. And I wasn't sure.
Mhm.
But yeah.
I just like the idea of like you before you had a beard, just being like little Dan, just being like, "This is awesome," with like a
Oh, it's
really
this. Yes, it wasn't Colossus. It was this.
send it, please.
Oh fuck. There is a painting he did of Colossus that I don't like, but man, I don't want to shit on Boris too much because he's a very important artist to a lot of people. But I remember seeing this. Let
Let me know when you
me see if
send
I
it.
can send this to you. Fuck, I gotta get the link. Hold on. Yes. Yes. It's at the top of this list. Here it is. It's this painting. I remember seeing this and being like, that's cool. And I was like, it just looks like dudes
Oh
painted.
yeah.
I was like, this, I don't know, it didn't capture the energy of like the Jack Kirby style comic drawings. It was just like, it's very real, but it's very lame.
Well, it's kind of flat in its own way.
Yeah. And I remember like oh my god, there's so many of the X-Men that are like way over rendered. I remember this one. I remember seeing this one and I remember the only thing I could think was why is his dick so big? I was like, what? Like, why is Boris doing this? Like, I don't need the center of the canvas to be Cyclops' cock. And I don't need it to be like breaking the silhouette, and I don't need it to be shaded that way.
I'm sharing I'm sharing these with my chat, the ones you're describing.
Yeah, I just remember being like, that was a choice he made. That we're really showing off his dick right in the middle, and like, what are we
Oh
doing? But
yeah,
like,
that's quite the bulge.
yeah, it's nuts. It's fucking crazy. I remember this one. Oh, this one. Oh my god. Sorry, now I'm just shitting on Boris. I don't mean to. Boris, I love you, but I remember seeing these as a kid and being like, these are awesome. Because like no one else was doing comic work that looked this finished, but it was all broken and weird and wrong. Everything about it was like wrong and strange, but like no one else was doing work that looked this like professional. So like you kind of had to force yourself to like it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you see this one I like a little more than the others because this one this last one of Wolverine, I think
Yeah.
this one I think I like a little more because it does kind of look like it kind of makes me feel like I'm looking at an old movie. Like if you had
Yeah.
like when you get those AI things of like, what if Wolverine was a
It's
dark,
fantasy.
yeah,
Yeah.
but his pose is so strange. Is he about to
And
sever
there's
my head?
there's some of these that I think are okay, but like overall, it's just like it's too, I don't know if it's the airbrush, it's just too smooth and weird, and it's almost like an uncanny valley thing where everybody looks like they're made out of grease and they're like
Yeah.
melting. Everyone's like a wax sculpture that's in the process of being in a hot room or something. It's very weird, but yeah. Anyway, Boris. I don't know. I don't know what to say. I feel bad, but I remember as a kid, I was like, I have to like Boris because he's the guy. He's the realistic comics guy.
Yeah, and you probably couldn't quite at the time put your finger on what it was about it that you were like not into.
No, like I would never like. I remember the trading cards. I remember this memory very specifically. I remember that I had trading cards that had Boris art on them, and I would look at them and be like, "That's really cool." But like it was weird. I wouldn't share it. And then I got a poster of a Boris. I think it was one of the Wolverine paintings he did. Someone gave it to me for like my 8th birthday, and I remember I just didn't hang it up. So I was like, it's not. I don't know. I just didn't want to hang it up. I was like, I don't want to see it that big. I want to let it be tiny, on a trading card. It felt weird to hang it up. I don't know why. Probably because it felt like there was a naked man covered in paint in my room. Because that's what all. Now that I'm thinking about it, it's probably because all of his paintings of the X-Men dudes just look like naked men that are like flexing in your room, and you can see like everything. And I probably, even as an 8-year-old boy, was like, this feels weird. I don't need to see every single muscle and
Yeah,
piece of sinew on this.
I don't need to see his ab. I don't want to call it, but it's a blank gutter. They call him Rick and Morty.
I do remember. Hmm, I do remember I did get one Wolverine poster that I fucking loved as a kid. Who was it by? I'll see if I can find it. I don't know if I can, but I'll try.
The classic old school comic art seems to have aged better.
Yeah, for sure. It's a less is more thing. It's like a smiley face is the most popular portrait in the world. It's like
Mm.
the most accessible. The more stuff you add, the less accessible it is.
Yeah, but even the really detailed comic art, for some reason, I think line art is a little harder to place in a particular time than something like a painting because paintings have there's a lot of historical language in a painting, and like like you can look at Boris Vallejo's Wolverine and you're like, oh, this is definitely a product of the '80s.
Mhm.
Or the '90s, that. But I used to love those Marvel masterpiece cards. Oh my goodness, I used to freak out. I used to like, I
Oh
can't.
yeah.
I would just, oh, I get so excited.
Um,
Get those deck of cards and like half of them are ones you already have, and your dad is like, "Why are you spending so much money on this?"
we did like a fake one in our Steve Lichman booster pack for the second Kickstarter. We did a fake Marvel Power card for our guy Facepalm, which was it was a fun throwback. It was fun to do.
That's cool. I don't remember that. I don't think I caught the Kickstarters. I think I ended up getting your books. You were selling them digitally after the campaign, right? Yeah, I
Yes.
think that's what
The
I remember.
we did a whole deck of trading cards that were knockoff. It was supposed to be like a parody of Magic the Gathering, and we got a cease and desist. And I remember telling the person in the email, they were like, "Hey, stop!" And I was like, "You can sue me if you want." I was like, "This is protected, and like if you sue me, I'm gonna make way more money because the publicity is gonna be great." I was like, "So, like, I'm not gonna stop. Like, this is clearly a joke. It's called Mystic the Togethering, and
I remember
there's
that.
no numbers on the cards. You can't use them. They're very clearly just a joke." And we made it so like when your mom cleans your room as a kid and like puts all your toys in the wrong places,
Mhm.
and you mixes up all your trading cards. Like there's cards that don't belong to that deck mixed in. Like there's a fake Pokemon card, and there's like a fake Marvel Power card, and there's like a memory photo from like a funeral of a cop. That's like mixed in like a remembrance photo, and there's all these funny things that we threw in there to make it a joke. So I was like, you can sue me if you want. Like I'm perfectly happy riding the publicity from that. But yeah, it was very fun to do.
Gross Girl just sent me another Boris Vallejo illustration. I'm passing those savings on to you in in our chat. It's he also did a cartoon, a Dracula like image, and it's really different and it's great.
Oh hell yeah! See, that's what I want more of that. I want that Vallejo.
Have you seen the art of Julie Bell, Vallejo's wife?
Very familiar. Yes,
Um,
it's even more oil.
yeah, she's even more shiny
Yeah.
in her art. Except instead of like hugely shiny muscular men, it's huge. It's very shiny, beautiful women, but in the
Yes.
almost the exact same style.
Yeah.
But they're a cute couple. I follow their Instagram. They've been married forever.
Oh, they're great. This is yeah. None of this is a commentary on them as people. They're wonderful. They're wonderful people, and they did a lot for the art community. Inspired a ton of people. I would never downplay their legacy.
Yeah,
I just remember as a kid being very confused.
yeah. Did you know that Julie Bell was also like the model for a lot of the characters that whenever he would
That
do movies?
doesn't surprise me. Yeah, that
She's
doesn't surprise
she
me.
was like a fitness model. Um,
That's crazy.
and I follow her Instagram now. She's like 60 something, and she is still she's like so attractive. She's just beautiful. I was like, she's aged really well. You know, she's got that kind of old hippie look with like the silver hair and the braid. You know, that kind of
Oh,
thing.
sure. Yeah, yeah.
And she still looks just she's so you know, some people just have that quality where they just kind of like you know, she smiles. It's like, oh yeah, you look like you're 25 again when you smile. It's like that, you know, just like
Right.
a really beautiful person. But you can tell she's super in love with her husband, which is really sweet because he's, you know, he's much older than her. He's like, Boris seems to be like, you know, older and just kind of, you know, at a different point, and I get this sense that they love just hanging out together and doing paintings like forever and
That's
ever.
cool. I mean, that's the dream. That's cool.
Yeah,
Good for them.
yeah, they got a nice, cute little marriage there. That's sorry, that's
And
kind of off topic.
I also get that I also get that you know, a lot of Boris's stuff is straight. It's from that 80s mindset. It's like every, you know, he's doing the, you know, Schwarzenegger covered in Crisco on the cover of Predator. Like he's, you know, he's doing that. I get it. I get that it's of the time and it, you
Crisco.
know, I get it. It's just something about adding the costumes to that aesthetic just makes them feel like it's like latex paint on a naked body.
Well, it does feel, to some extent, it is actually the natural, and this is not me disagreeing, but it is the natural progression from where comics were like with the original idea of the superhero kind of outfit is that it's like meant to embody a kind of nakedness, you know?
Yeah.
It's like Superman's tights. It's like he's basically naked because it's all about the anatomy and all that. So it feels like a painting style that really ratcheted that up, where it just feels like shiny naked bodybuilders.
Mhm.
That makes sense to me. Having said that, I just when I look at the work of something like Frazetta, I'm like, well, he makes that work. He takes that element, the like semi erotic action, not even semi erotic, but like the action hero, you know, mixed with the erotic element, and he just kind of makes it work in a way that it's just I don't know. There's no questions. Like I don't have any questions when I see his work. I
Yeah.
understand it.
I also like the texture in Frazetta's work. I feel like he doesn't get enough credit for like it feels very organic and it feels gritty. And it's like part of the Conan paintings feeling gritty is that there's areas that are unfinished. There's dry brush scrapes. Sometimes you can see the canvas or the wood grain if it's on board. There's like there's a very interesting organicness to it that you don't get when something is airbrushed and hyper rendered and lots of chrome. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
There's I don't want to say it's a mystery element, but there is an element of like making you look at it and search for things in the image a little bit, just a tiny amount, you know.
yeah.
Um,
And I feel like with Frazetta, whenever there's metal, it's never shiny. It's always patina or it's rusty or it's like dull. It's like from like a lived-in universe where like it's been there for a while and it's collected like grit and
yeah,
you can see scratches and build up on it. And I feel like in the Vallejo stuff, if it's metal, it's got to be chrome.
yeah,
Everything has to be shiny at all times, no matter what. It's like the most reflections always, and I like that. I like that dull metal. It's like I think that's part of the reason Colossus worked so well in those Deadpool movies is because the metal wasn't hyper reflective. It was kind of dull,
hmm
and
yeah,
it had some pits and scratches and some dirt in there, and like it felt good. If he looked like the T1000, I think it would have probably been a lot worse.
yeah. I think it also it makes him feel like it's like the flesh of like an elephant,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know, with
exactly.
the like hard cracks and stuff, and it sells his weight, like his size and his weight, um, as opposed to just being like, here's a guy, here's the same guy with metal skin. You know, it's like no, it's
Right.
like that changes his physiology, it changes the way he moves through space and how he exists and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Frazetta is someone who I remember someone talking about how his goal was always to paint in a way that the painting seemed finished at every stage of development.
Mhm.
That if he had to stop at any point, it would still be finished.
Right.
Which is like that's such a cool mindset.
So awesome.
Yeah, he was the goat. Yeah, I remember the story that his wife tells of like when after he had his stroke, and he was like, you know, it was I think she was going to bed, and he was looking at this painting he had done before the stroke, and he's like, I don't know this painting, I don't like it. I got to change something about it. And she's like, honey, you cannot do that right now. She's like,
Mhm.
you literally don't have that hand anymore. And he was like, no, I'll figure something out. And he starts messing with it, and she's like, I can't watch this. She's like, I can't watch you destroy your work. So she goes to bed stressed, you know. And then she wakes up in the morning and it looks incredible, and he was there painting all night, and he had fixed it by starting with his other hand, and he just learned how to do it.
So insane. Yeah, it's just insanity. It's just once in a lifetime talent that you're never gonna. It's just unbelievable. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
he's the guy that essentially started all this.
Yeah, I mean,
There
right
were
now
there,
I'm working on a King Arthur page, and there's so many Frazetta isms that I'm just kind of like aping off of. It's like we all owe so much to that that dude, you know.
yeah, another artist who was a good mix of sci-fi, fantasy, and horny.
Yeah.
He did a lot of little Playboy comics.
Yeah, no, and I do you watch the YouTube channel Frazetta Girls where it's his granddaughter?
No, I don't. I didn't even know that was a thing.
It's Frank Frazetta's granddaughter, and every week she tells a different story about his career, and will like you know she's like an ongoing documentarian, a biographer of
That's
his life,
awesome.
and she's you know she looks like a Frazetta painting herself. She's like this beautiful young woman, and she's just kind of and you can tell like she's like, oh, I'm gonna make my whole career talking about my granddad, you know, which is like
I mean,
go for it.
if you're lucky enough to be born his granddaughter, why not?
Yeah.
Keep that legacy alive in some way for
Oh
sure.
yeah. Like I say that with no judgment whatsoever. Like
Yeah.
absolutely. Um, and she she'll just do like segments, and she talks about different gigs. She'll give like little detailed stories of gigs that he's done, and a lot of the recurring themes was like people who had hired him and been like, could you make this less sexy? Like, because he,
No.
you know, and he would literally be like, no, no,
Chad face. No.
yeah, with like the
Yeah.
huge square jaw. Yeah.
Yeah, the beard. Yeah, no.
Yeah, and he would always win because he would be like, "No, I'm not going to change it," and they'd be like, "But her hips are just so seductive," and he's like, "Yeah, that's the idea. The whole point is that it's supposed
Yeah.
to make you have a reaction where you're like, wow. And yeah, and it was interesting because he would get flack from both sides. He would get flack from the people on the left, and he would also get flack from the religious types on the right who were like,
Hmm.
you know, and typically he would win because he was, they would be like, well, there was one or two cases where he would like someone edited his paintings after, and he was so furious, which understandably that he never wanted to work with him again.
Yeah, I get that. Fuck that.
Yeah, like that was. You have Frank Frazetta and you're gonna try to paint over his shit? Like, are you crazy?
It's like I remember the interview he gave where he's like, I think he said like the most confusing moment of his career was when he went to the movie theater to see Conan the Barbarian and he realized that the poster was a knockoff of his work and he was like, they could have just called me. He was
Yeah,
like, I could have just done the poster for them. Like, it's like, why hire a guy and tell him to do like a Frazetta style painting of Arnold? You could have just called me and had me do it. No, it's very funny.
was it that they couldn't afford him? I
I
can't
don't think
imagine that.
so.
I can't
He
imagine that
wasn't
being an
that
issue.
big at
Yeah,
the time. He wasn't that big. He wasn't legend status back then. He was working illustrator Frank Frazetta.
that's so weird. Yeah, I
He
don't
was
really understand
popular,
that.
but he wasn't what he is today.
Yeah,
But yeah,
I know that. You heard the story of when he met Clint Eastwood because he was doing a movie,
yeah,
and the Clint Eastwood was like shaking because he was so nervous to meet him.
it's so awesome.
Yeah, can you imagine Clint Eastwood? Clint Eastwood in the '70s too. Like this is like Dirty
Peak,
Harry Clint Eastwood,
yeah, peak Eastwood.
and he's like, "Oh, hello, sir."
So funny. I mean, a lot of people are in good shape, and a lot of people are talented, and a lot of people are successful, but very few people are in shape and talented and successful.
Yeah, yeah, it's true.
It's, I guess that would be intimidating for anyone to meet, especially if you're like a fan. I guess you never really outgrow fanboyism
Yeah.
in some cases.
Well, okay. Who? I mean, at this point, is there anyone that if you met them now, you'd be like nervous and be like, "Oh man," like what would
Uh,
get you to fanboy over them?
if I would be nervous, maybe Yoshitaka Amano, maybe. I don't think I'd be nervous if I met James Jean. I've met enough of James Jean's contemporaries that I think I'd be able to talk to him and not be weird.
Yeah,
Um, Amano might be because I'd have to fight the urge to talk about stuff that he wouldn't want to talk about. I'd have to actively not bring it up.
yeah,
I'd have to be running a program in the back of my mind, being like, don't ask him how he came up with the design for the Magitech armor in Final Fantasy VI. Don't ask him that. Like, don't do it. Like, don't ask him what it was like working on Angel's Egg. Don't ask him where this came from. Like, don't ask him where all the vampire and these. Like, I'd have to actively like force myself to not be a fanboy with him. He's the only person I can think of where that would happen.
yeah. Has there been instances where you met someone you really admired and you hated how you came across? Where you like afterwards, were like, "Oh God, I wish I'd done that differently."
Um, I'm sure there are. Let me think here. I'm trying to think of who I've met and been embarrassed after. Um, I mean, maybe the first time I met KK Kataki, but luckily he's like the nicest dude in the world.
Yeah. Which one is he? My Japanese names. I have a hard time remembering.
Oh, it's not even Japanese. KK was like the lead at, it might still be the lead at ArenaNet. He did like all the Guild War II paintings,
Okay.
and all the Guild War maybe one paintings. And he's like a hugely influential concept artist. He's from Hawaii.
Ah.
I think he's currently in Seattle, but he's luckily one of the nicest people on the planet. So yeah.
Is it okay? I don't know. I want to know if you've had because I've had this experience. Is it we Gross Girl says, "Okay, guys, time to start lifting weights." Yeah, well,
Nice.
me and Dan go to the gym.
We do
We already do that.
all the time.
Yeah, we wear matching headbands.
Yeah.
No, but I know Dan is he's got a Frazetta routine. He's going out playing baseball.
Baseball, not so much, but swimming 3 hours a day, absolutely.
Yeah. What was I going to ask you? Oh yeah, yeah. The have you had the experience of somebody who liked your work meeting you and they're nervous?
Oh
And
yeah, I've had that. Yeah.
is that uncomfortable for you?
Yeah, I'll usually just like give them a hug and say, calm down. Like that's usually I remember at one New York Comic Con, me and Dave were tabling and I can't remember what we were doing. It was either when Dave was selling his Ninja Turtle stuff or when we were trying to get Skull and Shark to be a thing. I can't remember. But someone came up who was like always in the streams because that was back when I was doing Crimson Daggers every day, and we had like hundreds of people tuning in, every day for hours. And someone came up who was like, I listen all the time, I'm this person, and they were like actually shaking so bad they dropped something. And
That's cute.
I remember just being like, "Hey, dude, it's cool. I'm just a dude. I'm just a big fat dude. Like it's fine." I just gave him a hug and I was like, look, I smell bad. I've been sweating. I'm a human. Like it's all good. Like I've been locked in Hall H or whatever it is. The airplane hangar at the Javits Center,
Yeah.
whatever the fuck that room is. I've been trapped in here all day. I'm sweating. I stink. Like it's all good, man. Like just I'm not an alien, just a dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was very weird because like I'm not even like a person. I did a stream.
I'm
That's
not
about it.
I'm not even a person.
Yeah, not even a person. I haven't done like much. It's especially back then. I hadn't even done the Steve books, but it was very funny because they were just like, I listen every day. I was like, that's fine. That's good. Just chill.
Did they seem like off in some way? Were they like a
I
little
think they were just incredibly nervous. I think maybe I think a lot of art people struggle with social anxiety because it's such a you're stuck inside all day kind of thing. And it's also something that a lot of people that maybe were isolated in younger years gravitate towards.
Mhm.
There's a weird Venn diagram of overlap between people that didn't have a ton of friends as kids and people that became very creative because they kind of had to.
Mhm. Yeah.
I'm definitely one of them. Like I'm talking about myself. And like, you pair that with once you get a job doing it, you're not really going out and socializing. And I think it can lead to people having a lot of social anxiety and not necessarily remembering how to be human sometimes.
Gross girl she says a quote. She says, "It's okay, shush shush here, have a carrot." Yeah, that's how you have to.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. No, I mean, um, yeah, I haven't gotten to know you, Dan. I actually have a little bit of a hard time imagining that you didn't have many friends because
Oh, I had no friends.
but you're a very charismatic guy. You're like very easy to get along with. I think that's why I like immediately. I feel like I don't usually. I mean, friendships with people, I do find them easy. If like you like somebody, you just talk to them more, But
Yeah.
um, it's like this for me doesn't happen that much. Where like I meet somebody, because like in your late 30s, it's hard to like have new friendships pop up. You get a little more set
Yeah.
in your ways. But yeah, when you say that you were, was your personality just very different?
Well, when I was a kid, like when I was like pre-high school, I had no friends. I had none.
Yeah.
I had just like I was the fat kid with glasses and I got beat up and that was really it. And then a weird series of events happened and by the time I got into high school, people either were scared of me or they liked me. And then I met Dave very shortly after that and Dave was like my first like real friend.
Hmm.
Like I had hung out with people before that, but I didn't feel any type of connection to them at all.
Yeah.
And Dave was like the first friend I ever had where I was like, we have things in common and we're hanging out like every day and we both draw. And like, this is, I'd never really had that before. I had people that I tolerated and people that I spent time with, but it was never like a connection.
Hmm.
And yeah, so I don't know. It was this weird thing where I had no friends until high school. And then suddenly in high school, I like was popular and it was for reasons that were very stupid and outside my control. But
Yeah, I know. I've heard that story. I think you told me this. I don't want to get into it now because it's a lot, but
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it was just like people thought you were something that you were not at all. Like you had been blamed for something that you had nothing to do with, essentially.
Yeah, and they thought that was like spooky and dangerous, and so it was like this weird thing. But it's like that's not. It had nothing to do with me, but it was yeah. And then also, I grew a beard when I was in 8th grade, and I could buy alcohol. Yeah,
That
there's the,
goes a long way for
yeah,
sure.
there's that.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
but yeah. So yeah, I didn't have really any friends until high school. And then I think because I had never had friends, like I just I don't know, I prioritized trying to be nice to people as and try to communicate with people because I remember what it felt like to not have that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
It's something Dan invented called empathy.
yes, my invention, copyright me. And if you do it without giving me my tithe, I will not have empathy in the court of law when I sue you.
He gets pretty intense about this, guys. I wouldn't test
I
him.
do.
No, I actually, when I had that experience after, so I came out with this comic West Deacon years ago, and it was like my first time, like publishing anything on my own. And I remember meeting some people at a convention. I think I told you that story where they were like people who hadn't gotten their copies, so they wanted to buy it from me in person, and they were like nervous to meet me, And I remember finding it really surreal because I remembered my fiance was there, and I was like, I looked at her and I was like, I think these people think that I'm more popular than I actually am, you know,
Uh,
because they were
it's a
like,
fun feeling when it happens.
they were acting like they were like meeting like a comics giant, and I was like, you guys understand that like I still have a day job where I teach phys
Mhm.
ed, right? Like I was like, I am not, but
It's like when people that's oh my god, that's so funny you bring that up. It's
yeah,
such a weird feeling when it happens because like I remember when my father's restaurant opened up that I helped him design. I went there and I met some people and they were like, "Oh, your father's told us all about you. You work in Hollywood." And I was like, "Technically, but no."
yeah,
But like, what do you do? And like, my answer to that is always choose the path that's the most fun. So I'm like, "Oh
absolutely.
yeah." You just lean into it. Oh yeah, yeah. Hollywood, yeah,
Oh,
that's
dude.
me. I'm Hollywood Dan,
Ab-
obviously. Clearly. Like, yeah.
Dude,
It's so
I
funny.
absolutely. So I remember I told you I used to I did stunts for a while, right? I told you this
Yeah.
story. So I'm on the set for this J.J. Abrams TV show, and I'm doing stunts where they're basically blowing me up over and over,
Mhm.
and I have like a one of those I have a bungee cord to get pulled back and thrown onto a crash mat like 30 feet away. So I'm in full makeup and I'm this guy getting blown up, and we're between takes, and still in costume, and I go to the catering, and this mother who's in her 50s and her daughter are like walking up to the set and being like,
Mhm.
what is this, what are they filming? And they ask me, they're like, oh my god, are you on the show? And I'm like, oh yeah, because it's like technically I'm
Hmm.
on the show because I'm the guy
Yeah.
getting blown up, because that was my job, is just to fall downstairs, get punched by the lead, or get blown up. And
Yeah.
I realized that because I didn't answer in full, they think I'm like an actor on the show.
Of course.
So they're like, "Oh my God, you're gonna be." They're like, "We don't even know you yet, but this is like your breakout role. You're gonna be so famous." And I was like, "Yes, sure." I was like,
Absolutely.
so then what happened was they wanted to take pictures with me, and I was like, okay. So somewhere there's this mom and daughter who have these pictures with, and it's like I towered over them, I'm
The
like tall.
next big thing.
Yeah, I'm like, because they thought I was like the leading man because I'm a bigger guy. So there's just these photos of me with this, and they're like, hugging me and like posing together, and I'm like in makeup, and they're like, and they were like probably posting on social media like, we met the lead actor for this new J.J. Abrams show, and then it's like they see the show, and I'm in one shot, and it's just me getting blown up,
Yeah. It's
and
great.
and it's like I laugh when I think about it, but I might have like totally ruined their day. I don't know.
No. You ruin their day. Not
um,
at all. I love when people like because people just don't understand the like industry for comics or illustration or any of that. Like normal people don't understand any of what it means or what the reality of it is.
yeah,
So if like I'll tell like I don't know, like a friend's mom or like my aunt or somebody like, oh yeah, I got a job. I'm at Hasbro. I'm designing, packaging art and advertising art for all the, dinosaur Transformers in that new Transformers movie. And then like I'll meet somebody later and they'll be like, oh, I heard all about you. You designed all of the robots in the Transformers movies. That's crazy. Like,
yeah.
like what do you do? Like it's so funny that people just don't understand it.
Yeah, no, and well, every time that my fiance tells anyone that Ryan draws comics for a living, right? That's what she'll say.
Hmm.
They're always like, "So what do you work for Marvel or DC? Which of those two?"
Yep.
They just
Yeah.
because
Well,
like
me too.
normal people, they're like, "Oh my god, are you working on like Spider-Man?" I was like, "Bro, if I if I was working on Spider-Man, like, it's just it's a whole it's an industry. That's like if I'm saying like I work on cars and people are like, "Oh, you own Ford?" Like it's just not, it makes me think of Mitch Hedberg where he's like whenever people find out he's a comedian, they're like, "Oh, cool, can you act?" And he's like, "Why would I?" He's like,
Yeah, why? Huh?
that's like meeting a chef and being like, "Cool that you can cook. Can you farm?" It's like,
It's the extra layer for me because they're like, "Oh, cool, you do art. Where can I see your stuff?" And I like tell them, and then they're like, "Oh, your stuff's amazing," and it's always Daniel Warren Johnson. And I'm like, it happens every single time, and I have to like, what do you like? It's gotten to a point where I'm so tired of it. I'm just like, yeah, yep,
"Yep, that's
uh
me."
huh, because they're never gonna look at it again. So I don't care enough to explain the difference, but
What was your
I'm just
middle
like,
name
oh
again?
yeah, Elijah.
Yeah, Daniel E. Warren. Do you think
Yeah.
you'd ever switch to that to vary it up?
Maybe. I think it's like a blood feud at this point. I don't know.
Well, if you do the Army Hammer thing and become famous for something horrific,
True. I can ruin him. I
yeah,
can reverse Uno this thing.
yeah, you got a chance to
I can
win
start
this.
looking into I can start looking into atrocities. You're right. This is the correct path to get my name. It was the only imagine that day in court when they're like, why did you do it? And it was the only way to get my name back.
You're like,
My
well, you see how
name.
Google works. Yeah, that's
My John Proctor moment. Yeah, it'd be great.
my name. I may never have another.
Another in this world. Yeah. Because it is my name.
That's such a great scene.
That's the best.
And when I was a kid and I realized that Daniel Day Lewis was the same guy from my other favorite movie, Last of the
Less
Mohicans,
the Mohicans, yeah.
blew my mind.
Like, this guy can do anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's the only time I think that I got a little nervous when I met Adam Hughes.
I could see that. It's Adam Hughes. I could see that.
I was starting my career in comics. I was a kid. I was like 20, and I had a table at a convention because I had worked on some indie book that had done pretty well. I did the art for it. It was a biography it was a short biography of oh my god, I'm blank. The lead singer of Nirvana. Jesus, why am I blanking?
Mm.
Kurt Cobain.
And yeah.
It was about the last days of Kurt Cobain, and I wasn't really interested in that subject, but I was like, I got hired. It was one of the paid gigs, so I was at the convention, and I take a break and I walk around and I meet Adam Hughes, and I remember I did that thing where you think you said something but you didn't, so you're just looking at them for a long time.
Yes.
Those,
What
those,
was it?
it was I came to his table, and I thought I'd said, "Hey, like I really love your work," but instead I just said, "Hey," and then he looked at me and
Oh
like,
no!
and he nodded, and I'm just standing over his table, and and you've met me in person. I'm have like a very like I maintain a lot of eye contact with people, so I think
Uh-huh.
I just stared into his eyes and nodded for a minute, and I think he looked at me like, do I owe this person money? Like why? Like as it came across, I think as me like trying to like put the elbow on him, like I'm muscling him, like I'm looking like I'm trying to intimidate him, when in reality I just froze because in front of me he had his work plate is splayed out like his original inks for
Mm.
when he did work on like Supergirl, and it's like this gorgeous, like, and I just stopped and then I said, I really like your work, but I said it like really muffled as I was walking away. So it was a disaster. It
I am
was
so sorry.
it's okay. It's okay. I met him again a year later and he didn't remember the experience and I was way more confident. Um but it was, yeah, because I told him about it when I met him last time and he's like, "Oh, I don't care." He's like, "I don't give a shit, don't worry about it."
That's so funny.
But yeah, so the whole thing of me meeting Adam Hughes the first time was walking up to him and going, "Hey," and then
That's
going,
great. I love that so much. I'm trying to think like I don't think I get embarrassed by weird things. I don't think it's usually meeting people or like people that I look up to. That's not those aren't the types of interactions that get me, I don't think.
"What are the ones that get you?"
Um when I went to school for audio engineering, I had a composition class where we had to write something and record all the parts to it ourselves in studio and play it. And when I got up on stage and I went to play my master recording, I had a panic attack and I had to fake a phone call and I ran out of the room and I never went back to that class ever again.
Oh man.
Ever again. It was like the midterm and I never went. And I didn't tell the truth. I told the professor something. I can't remember what. I made something up. And then I was like, I can't come back to class. I was like, I can do the assignments, but I can't come back to class. And I never went back. And it was such a weird, sudden, unexpected embarrassment. And I don't know where it came from. And it just I couldn't go back. I'm too ashamed.
You had to just change your name.
And he was like, well, everybody liked your composition. And I was like, what composition? Shut the fuck up. Like, shut up. I hate you. No, I'm never coming back to that class. And I never did.
Wow.
Yeah, weird things like that. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I've
Strange.
never been like I've never been an anxious person. That's what has happened with me in my life is that I think because I'm a little I'm a very friendly person, and I think as a result I've often embarrassed myself by being too friendly. And I think
Sure.
that's been the thing that's happened to me a lot is where I'll like be really familiar with somebody and then afterwards realize that they were probably uncomfortable. Like that was like a lot of my 20s was
I've
being
made
like
jokes that go too far. That's probably the thing I'm most guilty of. I get too friendly with people and I make jokes that go too far and they don't. I'm not at that level with them yet.
really.
Yeah. I used to do that way more than I do now. I
I was
had
gonna
to act.
say you have very good social awareness now.
It was a thing. I've worked on it. I've had to learn to not say things that I want to say that I think are funny or that I think are in good taste and put them
Yeah.
through a few filters first.
Yeah. Oh man,
But yeah.
I still think about like a dinner party like 12 years ago where I made a really fucked up joke
Hmm.
and like I could tell everybody at the table tensed
Yeah.
and I pretended I didn't notice and then like a year later I just was like I brought it up to one of my friends who was there and he was like yeah that was everybody like afterwards a few of us were like why the fuck would he say that but then we kind of like was like yeah Ryan just and I was like I was like 18 or 19 but
Hmm.
it's one of those things I still think about that about how messed up that joke was and how I shouldn't have said it.
Yeah.
And I hate that.
I've had those moments for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, where everyone in the room looks at you and they're like, "Why would you say that?" And then I'm like, "Why would I say that?" I'm like, "Oh wow, what the fuck is wrong with me?"
I sent to you something from Gross Girl as she did a sketch of Hollywood Dan as per your
Oh, Hollywood Dan,
yeah.
everyone's favorite.
It's great. It's my favorite
You take
persona.
a look. I make that joke all the time. I talk about the day I inevitably disappear, and people talk about Hollywood Dan walking around the bogs. Ghost. Oh yeah, that's Hollywood Dan. There he is. 100%. I love that.
I love the addition of oat milk. Is that a thing?
Of course. I mean, in Hollywood, it is.
Right. I don't.
You can't have regular
You
milk.
don't peg me as a oat milk consumer.
Well, it's because I'm not in Hollywood. If I
That's true.
was, I would be, clearly.
If the Steve Lichman show had finally gone through to filming, you'd have to drink oat milk by state law.
100%. 150%.
Johnny says I stop myself halfway through a sentence.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to redirect.
Yeah. But that's, I mean, it's funny because it's hard for me to imagine you doing that because it feels like, in my, my experience of you, you have very good social graces to the point where I'm like, when I talk to him, like, I really hope Dan feels like he can just tell me what he really thinks about something. He doesn't have to like,
Yeah.
but it's hard to imagine you being like foot and mouth.
Good example. First time meeting you guys, Malka was here.
Yeah.
We went upstairs, and in my mind the whole time, I'm running a script that's saying, don't bring up all the Jewish artists you like, because just because she's Jewish doesn't mean that she knows those artists. It's not, no, not every Jew knows these artists just because they're also Jewish. Don't bring it up. That's racist and weird. Then she saw the art by that guy and was like, "Oh, I know this artist." And I was like, "Oh, thank God. Oh, I have all of his stuff. It's over here." Like, but the whole time in my mind, I didn't want to be like, "Hey, growing up, did you ever see this version of this book? Or did you ever see illustrations of this? Or did you ever see," like, the whole time I was, "Don't bring that up. Don't bring that up. Don't bring that up."
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it's such a relief when somebody crosses the bridge for you, because then you can be like, "Okay, it is okay to bring this up." Because like I've had that happen before where I bring a thing up and they're just like, "Why?" Because I'm Asian. You think I know that show, or like you think I know that book? And I'm like, fuck. Like it came from a place of enthusiasm, but it read as something different. And
Yeah.
But yeah, I constantly have to force myself not to get enthusiastic about things.
The irony of that though is that Malka is like the exact opposite. Where if you bring up anything Jewish, she's like, "Oh yeah," like she's like loves indulging with that stuff.
Yeah,
She's very into like she really enjoys her like Jewish heritage. So if like if you had brought that up, she would have. I mean, obviously it ended up coming up organically, which is great. But it's just yeah, it's funny. She and I, one of the things I think neither one of us is very easily offended by. I mean, like if somebody gets offended by that, I don't know. I don't want to be judgmental, but like,
I've met people where that's happened before where I'm like, I've brought that up. I'm like, oh, do you know Arthur Seek? Like, you know this artist, I love his work, and he's done a lot of like children's books that you might have seen. And they're like, just I'm more than that identity. Like they get like mad about it, and I'm like, I get that. So I don't bring that stuff like that up anymore because it's like I've had it happen too many times where people get offended, where it feels like I'm reducing them to a thing, like a title that they happen to have. But
but that's
it is
so
nice.
lame.
It's nice when people are enthusiastic about it because then it's kind of like permission to geek out on things with them.
But that's such a lame. Like that's such a. I don't know, man. I don't want to. I know that you seem more forgiving of that than I am. But like if someone like I just don't like. Why do you give a shit? Like if I don't think any. If somebody finds out I'm Puerto Rican or that I have Persian heritage and they want to talk about that, like yeah,
Yeah,
cool. I mean, I don't have much to say about it because I don't know much about my Persian heritage, but like I can't imagine getting butthurt about it. Like it just feels like people do. Like, sometimes I don't
it's
want to.
happened.
I don't want to be
Yeah,
cynical, but I do feel like sometimes people do that because it gives them a chance to establish a power dynamic with you, where they get to like, oh,
could be.
now I got him off. He's on his heels a little bit,
Yeah, could be.
which I really don't like that. And I've been, and I can be a little bit confrontational sometimes, as I've talked about. Like if I feel like someone's trying something, like I've been in situations where somebody, made sort of performed as if they were offended by what I said, and I remember just being like, no, you're not
Yeah,
actually bothered by that. And then I remember Malka being like, Ryan, like like chill out, like, and I was just like, no, you're not actually offended. You're doing that because you see it shot you a chance to like it's like
right.
and so I try to I try to not to do that anymore because it's like not but it's only happened once or twice when I've met people who or if I've known someone a long time and they have a pattern of doing that where they like but yeah I can't imagine being bothered by that so I don't know I have a hard
Yeah,
time relating to that person.
that's why it was refreshing to have you guys over because you're very chill about that stuff. But it's definitely a thing I've noticed with other people. But now I try to be better about letting people volunteer information and steering conversations to the places people organically want to go. I don't try to like. I think a lot of it too came from teaching as much as I did before COVID, where like the dynamic of conversations you have in a classroom is very different than it is with everyday people, where it's like being inquisitive and kind of interview like is sort of the point when it's like you're talking to peers or talking to students or talking to professors, where it's like you want information and the only way to get it is to kind of dig for it.
Hmm.
And like when I meet a new person, I do want information and I do want to dig for it because I want to get to know the person and establish a connection. But if you're not careful about how you do that, it can come off as aggressive or reductive or sociopathic. So you just kind of have to chill a little bit and let them decide the pace and the tone of where it's going to go.
Hmm. So do you get nervous when you have people over at your place?
I tend to only invite people over that I think are going to be pretty chill. I
Okay.
don't I try not to put myself in a scenario where I'm going to have people over here that feel nervous or feel like they're not a good fit. So like I could tell from the conversations I'd had with you that I felt like that was a pretty safe bet.
Yeah.
I'm never going to, have a Hail Mary and invite somebody over here without ever, getting to know them a little bit first
Yeah.
because I don't want to accidentally, have that happen and have the whole thing out of it. But yeah,
Well,
especially in my home. But yeah,
it's also because you're somewhat of a public figure
ish,
ish and enough
ish.
that people know you and like I feel
Yeah,
like inviting the wrong person into your life can be really scary.
yeah. I've had instances of that in the past, but
Yeah.
it's
Wait, really? Is there
yeah.
anything you can talk about? I don't want to push it, but
I had a stalker once, but I don't have to get into the specifics. But I did have one once.
awesome.
They stopped after 6 years or so.
This
I won't
was
get into the specifics on the off chance they're listening, but yeah, it's not a great feeling. You know, when I lived in an old apartment before I built the house, and this person broke into the apartment while I was asleep, and a lot of the other things that happened. If anyone's around from back in the old Crimson Daggers days, you probably heard the stories that I would tell about it while they were happening in real time. But yeah, I try not to get into specifics on that anymore because it's kind of old news. But I've definitely it's happened and I've felt how that feels, and it's not a great feeling. So I try to limit that as much as possible. If you get a weird energy from somebody where they're like too excited, or if like if someone's like, hey, can you look at my portfolio? And I'm like, yeah, I'll check it out next week. I'm kind of busy. And then the next week rolls around and they're like, huh, I see how it is.
Oh no.
And it's like, oh, this is a person to avoid. This is like there's a lot of feelings attached to this that aren't, warranted.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, there's something going on here that has nothing to do with me, but they're putting the avatar of me onto it.
Is that's like the parasocial thing where it's like
Yeah,
in their
yeah.
mind they have a much tighter relationship with you because they've probably followed your work.
Yeah, and that happened a lot back when I was doing the stream, back when we were doing Crimson Daggers, and I was streaming like 10 hours a day every day. And it was like just leaving my camera on and only taking breaks for food and like talking to everybody. And like there were a few people that really overstepped the mark very significantly back then because they felt like they knew me and they felt like we were like actual friends in the real world. And it's like it got very strange very quick.
Ugh, yeah.
But yeah, no, I try to filter for that as much as possible nowadays. And it was a big part of the reason I took a big step back from doing as much stuff online as I was doing.
Yeah. You see,
But yeah,
I'm at the beginning of that now, where like I have a little bit of a fan base now that I didn't have before. So
yeah,
I'm meeting a lot of people now, and Malka has expressed concern that I'm a little bit too open. Um,
yeah, it's good to be a little more guarded for sure.
yeah, like there's one person in particular, and I really like this person, but there's a bit of that parasocial thing happening where they are extremely um, they're super friendly, and we actually talk a lot because this person's he's a big fan, so like
Mm.
I want to be available to, but she's like, Malka's like, you have to have a little bit of a barrier. You can't let people think that they can just DM you on Instagram any time of night. And I'm like,
Yes.
but this person was one of my first readers, and so it feels like, but it's one of those things where I have to it comes down to like being overly friendly and being like, well, people, they need to understand like you can be the friendly, approachable creator that they like, but you also need to be like, it's 8:30 on a Tuesday. I'm with my family now, and like I'm not going to be
Yeah.
checking, but it started because it was like they weren't getting their book, so I reached out to like make sure they got their copy, and then he was like, after that we started chatting about some stuff, and and I consider them somewhat of a friend, but Malka keeps stressing, she's like, you don't actually know this person.
Yeah.
And I'm a little bit gullible with that stuff where like
You got to be real careful with that too, because how you once you step towards somebody, the method and how you step away can either be very good or very bad, because you run the risk of making like Syndrome from The Incredibles. Like you gotta like I'm not even kidding. Like once you establish closeness with a person, especially if they're a person who's like, if they're in the art community, comics community, whatever, you're pre-selecting for people that might be more socially isolated, might be more passionate, might be more creative,
yeah,
might be more parasocial. Like once you step closer to somebody, how you choose to step away is a massive, massive risk. So like you have to take that into account too, because the dynamic you're in with them might mean a lot more to them than it does to you.
yeah, that's exactly what it is. That's
Yeah.
that's what it is. It was the realization that to this person, the relationship is much bigger on their end than it is to mine, and I could tell because of how frequently they were reaching out to me.
Yeah.
Um, Edgar says I was worried for a second. No, 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 guys, it's nobody in my streams. That's the point, because the people in my streams I actually have gotten to know pretty well at this point. So it's not,
Mm.
you know, it's
I mean,
just
I had like one artist, like one artist who literally he's still around. Like people would know. I'm not gonna leak anything, but like I remember him calling me one night and like screaming at me that I betrayed him and I was like a phony and a liar, and he was going to show everybody the truth about me, and like he'd never forgive me, and like all these, and like
what?
I was like, what is this, dude? Like what? So then it was like, okay, I got to really put a filter, because at that point, this was like a person who I'd been talking to for a couple of years, and like it's like it's just very strange.
It'd be really funny if you found out it was actually a message for Dan Warren Johnson.
Yeah, it'd be very funny. And then the other thing is there's a lot of fake people. There's a lot of clout chasers. There's a lot of people that are very vindictive. And I had another reverse experience where I thought I was very good friends with a person in the community who just was much further along in their career than I was. And they were, like an established professional person. And I had a really good, I thought, friendship with them, and good dynamic. And at the time, I was doing the portfolio review streams for Crimson Daggers, and Alejandro Mirabal reached out and was like, "Hey, we're going to do a workshop in Bali. We'd love to have you and Dave come out. You can do your portfolio reviews and stuff. Dave can do some painting demos. It'll be like an in-person version of your streams." And I was like, "Oh, that'd be great." And I found out that behind the scenes, this person who I thought I was friends with reached out to the Bali illustration seminar thing. And they were like, "Why are you inviting Dan?" They were like, "Dan sucks. He's not that good. I'm better than him. You should invite me instead. Like, Dan's a really nice guy, but that's not professional. You'd sell a lot more tickets if you invited me instead." And like, I saw the chats, and they sent them to me, and I was like, "Oh, okay. This person is more talented than me, and they've done more work than me, and they have a better portfolio than me, and they have more work experience than me, but they don't have a bigger audience because they weren't streaming all the time, and I was streaming all the time, and that's all it was, is they were just trying to leech that." And I was like, okay, like this sucks. It sucks to feel that way.
That's really,
but you just gotta be careful. Yeah, you just gotta be careful who you're talking to, and like try to understand what their motivations are, and if it's from a genuine place or a cynical place, and get a gauge on where they are.
Did you address?
No, I never talked to them. I never spoke to them again. No.
Yeah.
I never spoke to them again. I don't know if they, even to this day, I don't know if they know. I'm assuming they do, because we never spoke again.
Must have put two and two together or something.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Wow, that's terrible. That's so fucking catty, dude. That's so.
It's weird. Yeah, and then there's other people that are like, you'll meet somebody who's way ahead of you professionally, career-wise, established-wise. Like, they've done crazy things. They've worked on huge IPs, and they're the nicest person in the world, and they'll do anything to help you out at the drop of a hat.
Well, not to blow smoke up your ass, Dan, but that's how I think of you.
That wasn't what I was fishing for, but thank you.
No, I know you're not fishing for it. Get the fuck out of here. But like, that's how
I'm talking about, like, once in a while you meet like a Wes Burt, or you meet like a Trevor Claxton, and you're like, these are the nicest, or like Keikai Kataki, and you're like, these are the nicest fucking people in the universe. They're so giving and kind and generous and genuine. And it's, yeah.
No, but I mean, sorry, I don't want to embarrass you, but like, that is how I thought of you. It's like, because when I don't know if could you tell how nervous I was when I first met you, or no?
I thought it was just like the standard, like, meeting person for the first time jitters, and you'd been driving for a while,
Yeah. No, I mean, even when I talked on your live stream, but that's what I was.
Oh, no, I think you presented yourself very well.
I try to hide my anxiety about things. It wasn't even nervous to meet you, because like I don't get as nervous to meet people, but being on a live stream for the first time, where people are like listening to you talk in real time, and like making moment to moment judgments based on the first time that they're hearing you speak.
Right.
That shit, I was like, and then I listened to the playback afterwards, and I was like, oh my God, I am talking a mile a minute, and I'm using the word like every other word, which is something I particularly dislike. But yeah, that was, and then I got way more comfortable over time streaming, because I realized I enjoyed it, but then I was like, oh, this is probably a really good way to like connect with people. But yeah, I was very nervous to like, because you're working from home all day, and then you're like, oh yeah, okay, I guess I'll just talk to this guy, But
yeah,
but I was not nervous meeting you in person, because I don't get as well. I was a little bit, but that's mostly just meeting someone for the first time, just when you have that moment of being like, okay, this is like a, but yeah, I just kind of like for the most part, stopped getting nervous about meeting people after doing so many conventions, because at that point,
yeah, that'll do it.
It's just
that'll definitely do it.
Yeah, it's just like there's so many people you meet who you admire, and then you see them at a convention and they're like sweating behind a table, and you're like, okay. Yeah.
Conventions really bring out the humanity. Like, seeing your hero wait in line for a bathroom and knowing that they're about to pee their pants really takes the intimidation away quite a bit. Conventions are also a really good opportunity to like be a good human to people that you look up to, where it's like, I don't know, like, asking someone who you look up to casually if they need a coffee or a water when you're walking out and they have to stay at their table, like little things, little opportunities like that to just like establish a real connection with someone are nice. But yeah, cons are good because it's a good equalizer for everybody because you're all trapped in a room and it's usually not that comfortable. It usually doesn't smell that great. And everyone's stressed out. No one slept enough. Everyone's going to get sick after.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, there's a lot of unifying human experiences to doing a con.
Yeah, and you just start realizing, like, I mean, like when I was meeting Marvel editors to show them my portfolio, like way back when, I was just like, I had this trick. I don't know if you ever done this, but I had this trick where I would just imagine, if you're ever intimidated by a person, imagine them taking a painful shit,
Yeah.
like an uncomfortable
Yep.
shit, where they put the leg up on the door, like that kind of thing. Um, and if you just do that, I think it helps. Malka says it doesn't help. I've told her to do that, and she's like, "That's just, it's not getting rid of my anxiety." I'm like, "Really?" Because for me, it works.
It's not advice for everybody, but when it works, it works.
Yeah, I don't always picture people taking a shit, but when I do, it comforts me. See,
You do. They got their leg up.
I see my name in the chat here.
Uh-oh.
Gross Girl says some people are just so insecure that they think that they need to close doors behind them because they're scared that they'll get replaced. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. In reference to the guy that Dan's describing, but that's such like that's the kind of thing. If I did that, I would not be able to look at myself in the mirror afterwards. That's so slimy.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just a cynical thing, but
And also, even from a purely career standpoint, that hurts your career. Like,
yeah,
because like I listen, guys, I have a career doing this where I've done okay, and there are people that are way better artists than me who their work looks way better, and but I think one of the reasons I keep getting work is because I just people like me enough, like I'm nice enough that I get work, and it's like a big part of this is like if people see you do icky crap like that, they're gonna be like, yo, fuck that guy. Like at least that's been my experience. There's people that I've decided I had opportunities to work with people that are way out of my league, and I met them once, and I don't want to say his name. I'll tell you off screen at some point, Dan. But like,
sure.
I met him once, and I thought he was a drunk and a fool, and I was like, I don't want to work with him. And it was a chance to get a $400 a page on a graphic novel.
Yeah.
And I turned it down.
You probably did the right thing. There's certain people I'll definitely never work with because you find out things about people, and sometimes they fuck over people and people you care about and people you're coming up with, and it's like getting a reputation back is difficult.
Yeah.
In a community that tight knit.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah.
Let's see. Edgar says Ryan's somewhat that guy for me if the industry is the one I'll work. Which guy for you? The guy you can talk to? That's nice of you to say. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Gross Girl. I find you very easy to talk to. I appreciate that.
Oh, Gross Girl's great.
She's one of the funniest people I think I've ever met, honestly.
Yeah, Gross Girl's awesome. She's real easy to talk to.
She kind of feels like someone who, like, if I had known her in high school, I think I probably would have been one of those things where I just hang out with her at a party. We just hang out with us in a corner. And we don't, like I got that feeling from her. Like she probably was a really funny, a good friend to have.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's funny when you meet people as an adult. Sorry, say it again.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say it's funny when you meet people as an adult and you're like, oh, we would have gotten along really well as kids, and like I wouldn't have been so lonely all the time.
Yeah, I know. Where were you when I needed you? Yeah, it's very funny.
Yeah. Johnny says, for me, a big bonus is when someone messages me back on Insta and when I tell them I like their sculptures or if they help me answer a question. Yeah, definitely. That's got to be an even smaller community, right, Johnny? Johnny says, no one knows if I'm easy to talk to.
You gotta let him know, Johnny.
He works at Hooters. I mean, he's got to be easy.
You gotta let people in. Yeah, you gotta be easy to talk to at Hooters. I mean, come on. Does he really work at Hooters?
You didn't know that? Yeah, Johnny works at Hooters, man.
I see him commenting about working in kitchens all the time and doing stuff at work and dishwashing and stuff, but I didn't know that it was at Hooters.
Yeah,
they got good chicken wings.
Yeah, I've been to Hooters.
I've actually never been to a Hooters, but I've had takeout from Hooters.
Well, because after like a couple of my fights, the people would want to go there afterwards to like, because it's a good sports bar.
Oh,
So it would be like we would go there a lot, and I was always a little uncomfortable because I could tell the waitresses like a lot of them just had this feeling of contempt, like, where they're like, "Oh God, more of these guys coming."
of course. I worked at a studio briefly where there was like everybody would write a suggestion for what they wanted for lunch and throw it in like a fishbowl, and they'd do a random draw, and the guy who owned the place would order lunch for everybody. And Hooters was in there, and that's the only time I've ever had Hooters. They got a bunch of fucking buffalo wings.
Yeah, their wings are great. Especially, well, I think I mean the Hooters I went to, I got the impression a lot of the food was intended to be eaten while drunk. Like it's designed,
Yeah, I can see that.
which is not a knock on the food. Like that's a particular brand of enjoyment, right? Is the drunk food,
Sure.
but yeah.
Buffalo Wild Wings, Hooters walked so they could run.
You ever been to a Brazilian steakhouse, by the way?
One of my favorite things in the fucking universe, dude.
Yeah.
I fucking love a Brazilian steakhouse. Oh my god, I try to go at least twice a year if I can.
Which one do you go to?
There's one on the Cape, just called Brazilian Grill, and it's like a little mom and pop one.
Hmm.
But they have like the most amazing spread and selection of stuff. I've been to like a Rio, I've been to Fogo, I've been to some of the other chain ones. But yeah, this little mom and pop one on the Cape. Next time you're out, I'll take you. It's absolutely phenomenal. They have like such a selection of stuff. It's crazy. But yeah.
Yeah, I would love that. I went to one years ago in the city in Manhattan because I was meeting up with a friend and his dad who was on like a business trip,
Mhm.
and his dad was just like, "Hey, you ever been to a Brazilian steakhouse? You want to go tonight?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, sure." I didn't really know what it was. I had no idea
Mhm.
what I was in for, and I'm a serious red meat lover. Like I absolutely love anything.
It's the best.
It was maybe the best night of my life. It was like I think I probably ate like 14 pounds of meat. I was just
Yeah.
every variation of brisket and ribs and I had a bacon wrapped turkey leg. I had shrimp served with shredded. It was absolutely. They even had a sushi bar, which apparently was amazing, but I didn't have any room left. But I think about Brazilian steakhouses now, like it just pops in my mind as like a kind of like an erotic fantasy.
Yeah. My favorite thing, I don't know if you had it there, is when they take like a flank steak and they stud it with cheddar and then they do like the garlic butter on
Oh
it. So it's like a
man,
steak and cheese roast.
yeah,
The
yeah.
best.
Do you ever see the one where they walk up to the table with a hot knife and they cut the cheese with a hot knife so it melts
Yes.
onto your like ribeye?
Yep.
Oh my god.
They got those Brazilian chicken croquettes. Those are so good.
Oh my god.
But
That's
yeah, Brazilian steakhouse. Next time you're out, definitely take it. There's a really good one down in Hyannis.
okay. Yeah, I would also love to see your. I mean, you talked to me the other day on the phone about your family's place.
Oh yeah, we do a really solid brunch. If you're ever out here and it's a weekend, I'll take you for brunch. The
Yeah,
brunch is quite good if you're enjoy prime rib and eggs Benedict.
yeah. I mean, I do. And Malka eggs Benedict happens to be like her favorite dish for breakfast.
Yeah, they're quite good. I don't know how the fuck the head chef's name is Jack. He's an old friend of mine. I don't know how he does it. He won't tell me. He has a way where he makes the poached eggs and he puts them in a heating tray so people can serve them on a buffet, but the yolks don't overcook.
Oh my god, that sounds.
He somehow found a way to, or the exact temperature he must have figured out to make it so they can stay warm, but they don't overcook, which is nuts. I didn't even know that was a thing. I thought for sure they'd always overcook, but he's doing a really good job with the restaurant.
Life found a way. Oh, that sounds really good. You're
Well,
making me realize how hungry I am. But you know what? I definitely do. I want to visit you sometime between now and the wedding
sure.
because the wedding is in March and not March. The wedding's in March. Jesus Christ! No, the wedding's in June.
Yes.
The trip to Italy's in March, but sometime after that, I'll definitely take a drive.
There's always a massive Memorial Day party here if you don't have any plans for May. That's
Um,
getting pretty close to the wedding, though.
yeah, well, I actually in May well that's where when my birthday is.
Okay.
And we're going to be doing. Some of my friends are trying to rent like some house in the Poconos for like a bachelor's weekend.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I actually, I thought of inviting you to that, and then I was like, you probably wouldn't want to do that drive. But if you wanted to come, I actually
Throw
was,
me the invite, and if I can, I'll try to be there. And if I can't, it's nothing personal. I'll be there for the
yeah,
big day.
because I
But yeah,
did, because I was about to, and then Malka was like, you don't want to pressure him to do that because he's already making a big drive for the wedding. And then I was like,
yeah. If I can't, I won't. And if I can, I will. But yeah,
okay, yeah, it's just
feel
gonna
free to.
be, it's gonna be pretty chill. It's just me and my friends. Just we're gonna hang out, watch movies, just enjoy nature. That's been the
Nice.
tradition with our group for bachelor weekends. Like we don't go to strip clubs or anything.
Right.
We all hate that stuff. We just want to like hang out and maybe listen to
We're
music.
doing that in New Hampshire for my buddy's wedding coming up in a couple months. We're gonna do the exact same thing, just in New Hampshire.
Yeah, that's great. I like that. I like that as a bachelor weekend. It's like a bunch of dudes connecting with
Oh,
nature
it's
and like
great.
yeah.
I get to cook for everybody. It's my favorite thing.
Well, yeah. If you come by, I'm gonna expect you to cook. And I know that sounds terrible, but it's like
Well,
I don't have professional level chefs in my life that often.
I will 100% if I make it out. I 100% will. Or if you make it out here, if you come to, if you're out here for Memorial Day or any of the cookouts I do a huge 4th of July too. I cook everything for those, and they get pretty massive. But
Okay. Well, Fourth
I
of
think we had
July
like
I can definitely do because that's
I
after
think we had
work.
like
Sorry, go ahead.
120 people here for 4th of July last year.
Jesus Christ.
I smoked I smoked 3 briskets, 6 pork butts, 300 chicken wings, and it was pretty wild. Big
That's
firework display on the lake that the fire department does.
that sounds so stressful. Trying to
It's
host that
fun.
many people.
I love it. It's fun. It is stressful, but it's fun. I like hosting here.
Wow. You think in a different life you'd be full time running a restaurant?
No, I like cooking for friends. I don't like cooking for customers.
I see. That is a
It's a
big
very different dynamic. Customers will complain about almost anything. Friends are grateful that you made the effort.
yeah. It's true,
Yeah,
man. So I've talked about your pork belly a few times on here.
it's
It's come up.
a good recipe.
It's really good. Yeah.
Yeah, you
And I
slow cook it in juice and wine, and yeah,
I also I've thought about this a lot. Is that when I first met Dan in person, we were at a restaurant and I ordered the steak because I want to always try the steak wherever I go. But
mm,
Dan ordered duck rangoon, I think.
yeah.
And I remember Dan's telling me, guys, he's telling me about this personal project he's working on, and it sounds really interesting. But I'm having trouble focusing because I see the duck rangoon, and the whole time I'm like, I probably should have gotten that.
I always get the weirdest thing on the menu because it means that they're confident in it.
Sure.
And I always want to try what the chef is like their little signature thing. If you see something on a menu that you don't normally see, I usually go for that just because I wanna see what they're feeling confident about.
Yeah, of course. That makes
Yeah.
perfect sense. That's but that's a a connoisseur's logic. Whereas I'm just like I like red meat. They have red meat. I want to try. And the steak was great. Don't get me wrong. It was a beautiful steak.
Oh, it was a great little restaurant.
But I remember at some point you saw me looking at your duck rangoon and you were like, "Do you want to try it?" I was like, "No. You enjoy it. You enjoy it." And then I just kept staring at it, which was like,
Next time you're out, we can go back.
yeah, absolutely, man. It was great.
I'll find a different roast of meat to make you that isn't pork belly next time. I'll find a prime rib or something.
Well, after my wedding, which will have no red meat, I think I'm gonna be jonesing for a
Yeah,
good.
we'll find you a black Angus prime rib, and we'll
That
do
sounds
that.
really good.
That'll be good. We'll do a Yorkshire pudding under it, catch all the drippings, and some Hasselback or twice baked potatoes. A little feast. Good.
It must be so good to like know how to cook well. Like truthfully, that must be
It's a
such a gift.
blessing. It's a blessing and a curse.
Oh sure, yeah, I would imagine, especially when you're on a diet and you're like, because when
Yes.
I was, guys, when I was over at Dan's place, he made us this beautiful meal, this like feast, and then he like sat there and just watched us eat.
Yeah, it's great.
He's like,
It's
"Oh, I
wonderful.
already had my grilled chicken and brown rice for the evening, so I'm good." I was like, "Are you?"
I'm good. Gonna sit here.
Just sat there neatly folding his arms, just listening to conversation. I was like, I wouldn't be able to do that at all. I would just
I
be,
was I was feasting on the conversation.
yeah,
It kept me very full.
yeah. Your dad's story about his eye swelled with blood, that kept me very full for sure.
Oh my God, I know. He sure knows how to choose his topics.
It did, this is not a criticism of your dad because I thought he was hilarious, but like it was really funny that it came up totally like inorganically. Like we were just talking about something and there was a long pause and I made eye
Yeah.
contact with him and he's like, I almost went blind a few times. And I was like, oh, really? And then he just starts showing us these pictures.
The funniest thing about that is I didn't invite my dad. I don't invite my dad over for much. And the thing is, if he heard through the grapevine, probably from my mother, or my brother, that I was making pork, and if he hears that I'm cooking certain things, he'll just materialize.
He's like Kramer.
Because he knows I'm not going to send him away, but like he wasn't invited. He just heard that I was making a pork belly and just
Oh,
materialized.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because I actually, when I saw him there, I assumed that he was a frequent guest.
No,
Yeah.
no, not often. And yeah, it's just very funny. If I cook certain things, lasagna or any kind of roast, or if I get the smoker going, I've been told, I haven't confirmed this, but I've been told that sometimes in the summer he'll just drive by to see if there's smoke. And if there is, he'll just plan on showing up to eat whatever I've got in the smoker.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I've been told that he just does that sometimes,
I love that
and I'm like,
your dad's
okay.
like your dad's like a stray dog.
Essentially, yeah. But it's like he's not wanting for food. He owns a fucking restaurant. It's not like he's like, destitute or anything. But yeah, he's just certain things I'm cooking. If I'm cooking him, he's gonna show up.
That's so good.
It's very funny.
That's really
it's very, very funny.
He's just doing drive-bys.
He's like,
Yeah. That's amazing, man.
I'll get the only time he calls me. This is literally the only reason my father will ever call me on the phone is if he needs a favor or for this. He called me the other day. He was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I'm working." And he goes, "So I'm at the supermarket." I'm like, "Okay." And he goes, "They got ducks for sale, really cheap." And I'm like, "Cool. You gonna get some?" And he goes, "Bet they'd be really good on your smoker." Can you just say, I want you to smoke me a duck and not lay down a bunch of dots you want me to connect? Like, can you just say, please cook me a duck? Like, I'd respect it so much more. But yeah.
Because you would if he asked.
If he asked me to smoke him a duck, I'd probably strongly consider it.
I love that he's
But,
like,
yeah.
I love that he's like weirdly passive aggressive about it.
Yeah, or I'd at least keep it in mind for the next time I'm cooking something, and I'd keep it in the back of my mind for something to throw on for him. But
Yeah, Gross Girl says that's hilarious feral behavior.
yeah, it's very, very funny. I don't know when he started doing it. I was told a few months ago that he had started doing it over the summer, where he would just randomly drive by to see if there was smoke rising up, like people waiting for the Pope to be announced or something. I'm waiting to see what meat's coming out of the fucking smoker. It's so funny.
I like the Vatican comparison. Like,
yeah. Blue smoke is rising. It is pork belly.
And everybody like does the sign of the cross and cheers.
Exactly. But yeah,
that's good stuff.
I do love cooking. I love having people over. I love having cookouts and dinner parties and any excuse to. It's like the thing we were talking about earlier. Like it's so isolating doing this kind of work if you're not in house at a studio. That like you don't get to see people often, especially people that do the same thing. Like people like you or other artists I know. Like so rarely are you in the same place at the same time. So. Yeah. When they have an opportunity to get people together to do something like that, I like to make it the best it can be.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like if I'm gonna see people, I want to really enjoy the time I have with those people and make it something that's gonna be memorable. So I like hosting and I like finding excuses to get people over here.
Yeah, it is interesting too, like how you can get closer to people without having met them in person that many times.
Yeah.
And then like
yeah,
when
absolutely.
you do meet them in person, you're like, okay, I want to make sure I like show them a good time.
Yeah.
Because I had people visiting me who knew me through my job, and when they were like in my neighborhood in Brooklyn back when I lived there, I would be like, okay, I gotta like really. I was like, what if they find out that I'm a boring person who doesn't do that much? You know what I mean? Like it's not good. Because like most of my life is just like I go to the gym, I go home and I draw, and then I go for a walk in the woods now, but like. I'm not like I don't know much about the nightlife of a city,
Sure.
So the country really suits me because it's like I'm gonna end like in a few minutes. I'm gonna go and just like do a walk outside, and then that's it. And then it's just pick up my girl. It's real. I really like this like simple existence.
Yeah.
It's also it's I'm happy to be one of the like a lot of creative types get really into drugs and alcohol and stuff, and
Mm,
I think, and I know you don't drink. I don't even. I think I very rarely have a beer. Even I just don't enjoy
yeah.
being drunk that much.
I
Yeah,
drank a little when I was younger, and I realized very quickly that I would become an alcoholic, so I stopped. I When I first moved to Boston and I was like 18, there was like a month where I was drunk every day, and then I was like, "Oh, this is how it starts," and then I stopped.
yeah,
I
that's a
was
good
like,
realization
"Oh,
though, man.
well, I." I had a real bad night, and I drank way too much Jack Daniels. And I don't know if you're familiar with the anatomy of Massachusetts, but I blacked out in Boston, and I woke up in my car in Provincetown. And I said, "Oh, I drove that many miles drunk, and I don't remember any of it. I'm never drinking again." And now I only drink socially, and I never get drunk. I only drink socially, and I stop at tipsy.
That's how old were you?
I was 18,
Yeah, that's around the time that so I for
18, 19.
that's yeah, that's scary though. Blacking out is really scary. If you're someone who understands the gravity of that of missing time, it's scary.
Mhm.
Some people think it's funny in college, like, oh yeah, I don't remember what happened. It's like you should because you might have done something terrible.
Yeah,
Like
especially if you're in a vehicle. It's like
yeah,
just I
yeah,
don't want to know that I'm that good at drunk driving. That's not a skill I want to have. So it's like,
hmm
I can't put myself in that scenario where it's going to happen.
yeah. Well, I mean, for me, I remember because I really missed the window on drinking a lot because it happens a lot in college, but that's when I started boxing. So it was like
Sure.
that whole period of time where you learn how to party was like I was just like pretty religiously not partying, that
Yeah.
much. But I did on one occasion get really shit faced, and I ended up hooking up with somebody and not remembering it, and like
Oh, that's scary
that
on many levels.
made me feel disgusted. Like
Yeah, that's
it wasn't nothing wrong with her. It's just she was not someone that I would have like really gone for, and it was like
mhm.
she just got me drunk enough that I was okay, like
Well, there's
and
also like did use protection, STDs, pregnancy. There's all these things downstream from that
yeah,
are just like it's not worth the fucking headache.
yep. Yep,
Yeah.
and also I felt a little messed up afterwards because I think she had confessed to a friend that she like wanted to get me drunk that night so that I would hook up with her,
Oh,
which
it's
is
not good.
yeah, which is like I'm not gonna like condemn her horribly for it because it's like I understand that like I don't know the gender dynamics there are a whole battle bottle of wax, but like generally speaking, it's like and it wasn't like yeah, whatever. I just you shouldn't
Yeah.
get so drunk that you don't have like you can't like I don't remember how much I consented. I have no
Agency. Yeah. Don't
yeah
get so drunk that you don't have agency because
yeah
it's like if you're not a person anymore, you're just a fucking maniac behind
yeah.
don't do that.
And I had a friend. I still have this friend. He's a great guy, but he had a pattern of, and he's a really wonderful person, but he has a pattern of drinking too much and then getting like annoying.
Sure.
And we like a few years ago we had hung out. We went to this. We were in the city rooms meeting up in the city, and he did that thing again where he was like, and this is, or he was already like in his early to mid 30s, and he got so drunk that he was just like, we had to kind of steer him all night and stop him from like
Oh
getting
Jesus.
into bad situations. And afterwards, I kind of had to have a talk with him, and I was like, you can't keep doing this. Like, I'm not going to hang out with you if you don't know how to, like, a big part of like being a grown ass man and like having
Yeah.
like is like knowing what your limit is and like he's a skinny guy just pouring alcohol into his face until he's like a mess. And I was like, yo, this is really unbecoming for a guy who's like 34 years old.
It really sucks when you have to big bro your friends.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
it destroys the friendship dynamic, and you become like the police.
Yeah.
But it's like sometimes you just have to. It sucks to have to do it, but sometimes you just have. Yeah, you have to do it.
Yeah. It because it feels awkward. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah,
And
one of me and Dave's best friends had that problem, and it got to the point where we were just like, "Listen, man, it's the booze or it's our friendship. Like that we're not gonna tolerate this anymore." And he chose the booze. So
was
we're
it
like,
that
"Okay,
bad?
yeah, it was that bad." We're
This
like,
is a
"Okay."
mutual friend that you and Dave had that this happened
He
with.
was our best friend. It was like the three of us, and we would make movies together, and we like wrote skits, and we were gonna like try and be the next like Smosh basically.
Yeah.
And we were like best high school friends. I basically lived at his house. I lived on his couch. I was really close with his family. We were, I went to all their holidays. Like we were like family essentially. And when he started drinking later in high school, it got really, really, he almost died a few times. And like, he blacked out at a party and turned purple and stopped breathing. And we had to, revive him. And like, I remember his mom breaking down. His mom like pinned me against a wall and backhanded me and was like, "You're gonna let my son die." And I'm like, "It's not my fault. Like, we're trying to stop him, but he will not let us." Like, and when it got to the point where they were like blaming us for it, I was like, "Listen, man, like it's the alcohol or it's our friendship. Like you just can't. This is getting insane." And he chose the booze and he just leaned into it.
Is he still alive?
I don't know. I know that about 8 years ago, he was on a bike and he got run over by a van and he couldn't sue the person driving the van because his blood alcohol level was so high that he never would have won the case.
Oh man, Jesus.
I know that. I know his whole body. I saw the photo of him in like a full body cast and I was like, okay. But yeah, I don't know. I have no idea if he's still, I think I would have heard if he was passed, but it's been a while. I haven't spoken to his family in some time.
Yeah, that's terrible.
It's the story, if anyone remembers this, where after not talking for years, he called me one night and was like, "I'm in Boston and I have nowhere to sleep." And I was like, okay. And stupid, I shouldn't have, but it had been a long time at that point. And I picked him up and he had a backpack and I was like, "How did you get back to Boston?" And he was like, I can't remember what he said. He either flew in for a holiday and overstayed or he hitchhiked or something.
Yeah.
And he was, blackout drunk already before the second he got in my car. And then he passed out. And when he was passed out, I went through his backpack because I could hear that there were bottles in it. And it was just full of hundreds of nips, just hundreds of nips. And I was like, okay, like what is going on? So when he woke up,
hundreds of nips,
the little tiny bottles of hard liquor.
Yeah.
Hundreds of them. And when he woke up, I was like, what's going on? And he was like, oh, I'm just saving money. He was like, because for the really hard liquor, it's actually cheaper to buy them in nips and than it is to get the whole bottle. And I was like, oh, you're like doing the math on how to like this is insane, dude. So
he's like you with the chicken thighs.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly that. And then Dave did a comic called Rough Cat where Rough Cat said that about nips. And then I guess he saw it and he just blocked us both on everything. And that was it. That was the last correspondence I ever had with that individual.
That's really sad, especially because I would have been really happy if somebody had mocked me in their comic. I would have thought that was cool. But I guess but that means he has the self-awareness to know he has to be a little bit ashamed of this.
Yeah, he wasn't able to laugh at it. He felt guilt or shame or something or anger. So I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. It's some people you just have to be the big bro. And if they don't want to listen, you have to be willing to cut the tie.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to say this friend that I was talking to, it wasn't that he was an alcoholic. It was that he actually didn't drink that often, but when he did, he would go hog wild.
Oh, geez.
And that's actually for me a little more dangerous because it's like your body's not used to alcohol. You can get alcohol poisoning.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, it was more just like for in that instance, thankfully, it was nothing as serious as what you're describing. It was more just like, hey, when you do this, you embarrass me, and then the night turns into me taking care of you.
And yeah, which also sucks.
Yeah, I don't want to like be a babysitter to a grown man at 4 a.m.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. But
I ended up puke and all that shit.
Generally, I just don't drink very much anymore. I mean, I have a drink sometimes with dinner. Like I'm not, but I just don't like, being drunk and then saying something like, well, when you talk about like making a joke that you regret, like that happens so much more when you're drunk, and it's like it's not.
Oh yeah, your filter's gone. Yeah,
it's such an embarrassing thing. Where the next day you're like, I can't believe I said that. I'm gonna have to apologize. It's just like that's so cringy. But yeah.
We can't end on this topic. We need one more topic. It can be a short topic, but I know you're getting ready to go.
Mostly because I'm hungry and I want to go for a walk. But I do want to end on a different topic for sure.
Let's end on a different topic.
Let's check the chat. Maybe they'll have something.
Chat, give us something that isn't this to talk about briefly, so we can leave you all on a positive note.
They're all sharing stories about drunk people they know. Oh, this is so terrible. They're all telling about their alcoholics who they've lost over the years.
Oh
Guys,
no.
Johnny, Edgar, and Gross Girl all have like personal stories about. These are intense. Edgar, that's
Yeah.
yeah. Edgar's got a good one. Edgar says I do that all the time without alcohol. Yeah, like embarrassing himself.
Very
I
good.
can see that. There was a few instances way back in my early streams where Edgar had like a personal confession he would put in the chat, and I'd be like, "Bro, delete that. Like the internet's gonna come after you. You have to. Sweet summer child, you got to get rid of that."
You must cleanse it.
Right now, I'll change the subject. Right now, I'm gonna put this on screen.
Sure.
The page I'm working on is the bottom panel is Arthur like kind of getting dogpiled by Mordred's troops.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of slightly getting it, or not even an homage, but just like a vibe from Dark Knight Returns, where Batman's on the rooftop and that whole SWAT team tackles him.
Oh.
I don't know if you remember, but it's because it's. Have you ever read Dark Knight Returns?
I have read Dark Knight Returns. I love it.
There's a scene toward the end where he, all of the new commissioners, like elite SWAT team, they're all like dogpiling on Batman, and he has this great moment where it's his narrating his brain, and he just says like, "There's so many of them, and they're all so young." And it's so tragic because he's like realizing these guys are just, he's just an old man now, and that's kind of the vibe I'm kind of going for with Arthur in this, because this is
I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah, this is him toward the end of his
life.
And I'm also like, I think I told you I'm basing it partially on that the supposed finding of Arthur's body where he was like a giant.
Right.
Glastonbury, the Glastonbury legend.
The Glastonbury thing, yeah.
And that's, I got to tell you, man, that gave me such a cool direction to go in, because like I had to redraw these pages, because the initial version he had the same kind of armor, but he was just something was missing, and then I realized like him being like really huge and robust really worked, because I don't know, it gave me, like, I've been kind of referencing FromSoft and the way that they play with scale of their characters. Like you look at like Sekiro, and like his the owl, I think, is the name of Sekiro's master.
Mm-hmm.
Like Arthur's design is kind of based on him a little bit. Like I loved how huge he is, and like how his hair is like a lion's mane. It's just so awesome.
There's a great moment in Dark Souls 2 when you meet old King Vendrick, and he's like 4 people tall, and he's like kneeling, and he doesn't act different, but he's just like this massive human, and it's like, oh, that's so rad. Like all the old like connected to the gods people are just have this stature that's just massive.
Something about scale in that way. I don't know why movies don't play with scale of actors more often. It's weird.
I don't know. Lord of the Rings is like the last real good example.
Yeah, but it's like such a powerful thing to like and it's also even in horror, like having a creature that's humanoid but has a head that's too large or something like that is like, it's particularly unnerving, and yet it's not something they do that much unless it's like full CGI.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like
that page a lot. I like the energy.
Oh, sorry, say it again. I cut you off.
I like that page a lot. I like the energy. I like that there's force coming from 2 different directions, and you can kind of see Arthur dealing with it.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, that's this is like right before the other knights come in, so it's kind of like that Deus Ex Machina moment.
That's awesome.
I've been researching. Thank you, by the way. I've been doing a lot of research into like listening to a ton of historians talk about what medieval warfare was like, and it's really interesting. I mean, it's the kind of stuff that I like the actual way that people fought back then. I wouldn't really be able to do in a comic as much, because a lot of it's like a rugby game, where they're like the shields are just,
sure.
It's just like people hiding behind their shields and and stabbing with a spear. Like that's most of what warfare is. And
right,
in the movies when you see people scattered in clumps and everybody's just a full on melee chaos, like that didn't really happen that much. But
it's that thing historians always talk about where like Thermopylae was actually probably extremely boring.
yeah.
It was probably like the most boring battle of all time, but it's like this lid's just a bunch of dudes standing still with their shields up, waiting for people to get poked. And it's like, okay, well.
But in the movie, they're like
epic moment.
Yeah, in the movie, they're like leaping through the air, and
yes.
Yeah, it's. But something that I've loved learning about was like, I should send you some of these. You ever heard of, well, they all have like European names that I can't really place, but like the, they're like HEMA practitioners, that kind of thing. So like historical
I don't
European
think I know what
martial
you're
arts.
talking about.
HEMA,
No.
HEMA is an acronym for Historical European Martial Arts. And there's
Are
just,
those the dudes in like the armor that like fight each other on YouTube and they like show how it rolls and shit?
yeah, that's a part of HEMA is are literally
Okay.
literally armored combat that they do at like boxing rings, which is hilarious. Like they'll get into a UFC ring, but it's just two guys in knight armor and they're just like hitting, they're like whacking each other with maces. It's hilarious. But that stuff I find kind of interesting, but the combat to me always looks so sloppy. Um,
Yeah.
but the stuff that I find really interesting at HEMA is the like unarmored combat where it's just showing the way people moved, like guys who've done nothing but study this stuff their whole lives and recreating what ancient duels actually looked like. And it's absolutely insane. I have to send it to you because it's like the actual swordplay of how people moved with a broadsword like 1,000 years ago is
Mhm.
nothing like we see in the movies. People like it's
I'd
like,
love to watch that.
oh, dude, it's incredible. And as someone who was like, I have this interest in martial arts, and I like that stuff a lot. I really love, a big thing that this one historian Mike Loads, and he has a show called Loads of History, which get your head around that.
That's great.
Isn't that cute? And he's this really adorable, like short British man who's bald. And he has this whole thing where he talks about how like when you see sword fights in movies, it's a lot of like fixed positions, like the guy stands with a sword but they were like, it's actually a lot more like a boxing match. Like you were constantly in motion. So if you had two people having like a sword fight, even what they're doing like sword and shield, they're like moving their hands around their heads, like covering their backs and their ears. And it's like a boxing match. And it's like you think about what a knight was actually like, and they were closer to like what we would think of as like a modern day martial artist. They were not these like lumbering automatons like moving really slowly. They were actually like fast and dynamic, and they were twirling and like the whole thing of swords twirling. They're like, well, is that even practical? And they were like, yeah, it actually is, because the whole point is that you're twirling this big broadsword as you're charging, and as you're twirling
Mm,
it, they don't know which angle the attack is coming from until the moment it happens,
makes sense.
which is really cool because it means that they were saying like these guys would be facing off with two broadswords and they're both twirling it in crazy angles and just like where it looks like the closer to like oh yeah, they're okay. The chat is requesting that I post it, so I'm gonna have to do that. I'll send you some of them, my favorites. They're incredible. Here, but anyway, sorry, I talked for a long time there. What were we gonna say, Dan?
Nothing at all. I was gonna bring up it's just reminding me of that show that used to be on all the time where it was like, who would win in a fight? A classic Viking or a Japanese samurai? It's like
The
it have the two
show
warriors come in.
the show is called
Yeah.
The Greatest Warrior,
Yes.
and they would use
Yes.
mathematical algorithms to figure out who would most likely win between like William Wallace and like Shaka Zulu.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And I'm just like, this is insane. Like, this is just an insane show.
It's really silly. And yeah, I used to love that. I used to watch it, and then I would love at the end when there's always somebody who's like really butthurt because their guy didn't win in the simulation.
Mm.
It'd be like, well, how can you really know that Shaka Zulu can't beat William Wallace? I mean, it's a computer, it's like, but they can't say that if their guy won, so they have to.
Also, when's the last time you watched Zulu? Because man, that's a good
I
movie.
saw it a couple years ago and thought it was genius.
It's a good fucking movie.
Oh, here, guys.
That is some peak Michael Caine.
Oh yeah, he's so young there too, isn't he? Right? He's like Zulu. Wasn't that back in the 80s, 90s?
Zulu, I think was late 70s.
Yeah. Wow. Damn. I'm posting these in the chat. Should I send them to you on Google?
To me, yeah.
Okay. So, this group, this particular YouTube channel, I really like it because they're also filmmakers. So they'll do like short little introductions, often with no dialogue, to set up this big sword fight. but more than anything, they're martial arts guys. So it's like a show. They're professional stuntmen with a YouTube channel that showcases that they've learned um, how to do medieval combat. But it's just it just looks so awesome. Like I don't know how else to describe it. It just looks really cool. It's like the kind of thing that I've been analyzing a lot because I'm like, I have to figure out a way to translate this into what I'm doing. Like it has to, so like if I try to do the Jack Kirby thing where it's like you want to show a compelling action sequence, then what you do is you show people at the peak of movement at the like where they're right after they complete a movement or right before. So you're always at the
Mhm.
apex of a movement. But yeah, I just sent them to you. You can watch them later. It's not.
I'm looking at them right now.
Oh, okay.
Dang.
Yeah, see the way they're moving? It's insane.
Yeah.
Like
Huh.
how fast it is. Because like they keep saying like broadswords were actually not heavy, which is something people don't understand. It wasn't like a huge hunk of iron. It was basically like it's like a thin sheet of metal that's actually bendy and durable.
Yeah, it wasn't a fucking claymore.
Yeah. Yeah. So they were like the way you'd use it, you were just like, you would be moving it around constantly to keep your enemies at a distance. And but the thing is, Dan, you look at that and you're like, there's no way to really translate this into a graphic novel. Like you can't
No,
make.
not really. Unless you're gonna like do motion lines and like tons of quick cut panels, but that yeah, there's really not a convincing way because it would be up to the speed of the reader at that point.
Yeah, I mean, like a comic that does a pretty good job of capturing some of that intensity is like Blade of the Immortal, that manga.
Mm.
Have you ever read it? It's like,
I'm familiar with it. Manga's so good at speed.
yeah, no, I mean, oh, dude, yeah, their approach to an action sequence in manga is totally different than the West. Totally different. A DC comic, they're like the big fight scene between Superman and Darkseid is a double page spread of them in
Right.
a beautiful, Greek pose, right? But in manga, they're like, no, let's have like 30 panels where you can follow the choreography of something.
Yeah.
Um,
There's some stuff in Vagabond that blows my mind.
oh yeah, that
Where you
is
just feel the motion with the fabric and the hair. You can feel the speed just by how they draw the fabric and the hair, and you're like, oh my god, like it's so effective. There's so much economy with the movement.
I think Takahiko Inoue might be one of the greatest mangaka like ever. Because that's the guy who did Vagabond, right? Takahiko Inoue.
Yes,
He
I
did
think so.
he did that, and I think he also did like Slam Dunk, didn't he?
Yes, and he did all the art for Lost Odyssey, I want to say.
Oh, I don't even know that one.
That was the Sakaguchi game he made after Square fired him and he couldn't do Final Fantasy anymore.
I didn't even know he worked for Square.
Uh, he didn't because Sakaguchi got fired by Square
Oh, okay,
and started his own company called Mistwalker.
okay.
And he was like, "Well, I can't have Yoshitaka Amano anymore, so I'm going to go get a different comic-related artist." And he went after him and had him do a bunch of concept art for. He made two games. He did one called Blue Dragon with Toriyama, and he did Lost Odyssey with that guy.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool. He had a long career so far. Right?
I know. And Vagabond is like, I remember looking at that when I was in high school, and they had early issues of that, and I was like, this is some of the craziest shit I've ever seen. As
Yeah,
far as like in an ink drawings, I was like, there's hundreds of them. I was like, whoa.
yeah. Well, especially because someone had pointed out that he's very different than a lot of Japanese artists because he favors the brush instead of the quill. And
Mm,
it's so common right now in manga and traditionally to use a quill, to use a pen for the sharpness of it. But with
right.
Takahiko Inoue, he's using like a beautiful, like, like a horsehair brush. And so it just has a softer look to the lines. And
It really does help capture the motion too. That the brush does a lot of like when he moves it, you can really feel the movement in it.
a lot of the heavy lifting is definitely done by
Yeah.
the shape that the brush line takes.
Yeah. It's so I don't know, you can follow it in such a specific way.
Yeah.
I don't want to keep you if you got to eat, buddy. I don't want to. Metabolism is important, you
Well,
know.
it is your fault. You talked about food for like a while, and
I'm aware. I'm
you
aware.
promised me all these dishes you're gonna make me, and it's like,
I've
okay,
done this to you. Yes.
until that day comes, I do need to.
I got to cook you a Marry Me lasagna with a prime rib.
Okay, remember you said that because that's the one that we're gonna land on. that's, that
The Marry
sounds
Me lasagna and a prime rib.
that sounds
Yeah.
incredible, dude.
It's a lasagna with a sun-dried tomato cream sauce. It's great. And I'll make you a nice studded prime rib, some horseradish on the side. It'll be good.
Can you say that again in French? Can you just like
Je voudrais lasagna de mariage. No, I can't.
you did not capture the sexual energy I was hoping for there, but that's fine.
Lay prime rib. Yeah.
Question mark?
Yeah, I don't know. It's the best I can do, buddy.
Yeah, thank you so much, man. This was great. Chat, I
This is
love you
fun.
guys. I'll talk to you later, Dan.
Later, buddy.
Thanks for chatting, man.
Anytime, man. Always a pleasure.
Bye, everybody. I'll be posting some of this on the Patreon tonight, and I'm definitely going to put a link to the video for anyone who didn't see it. Can you hear the cat? The cat is like whimpering. I already fed the cat, but I'm going to maybe feed the cat a snack. I don't know. I'm overfeeding the cat. I know I am. But, you know, it's a little animal. Good night, guys. Good night. Good late afternoon. I'm going to go eat and go for a walk.